And we're live. Hello and welcome to, I guess, a James Brown live stream, I guess. I'm here with Sabby Reyes Kulkarni from feedbackdev.substack.com.
Hello.
I always introduce Sabby as a cultural critic, cultural writer. He hates those phrases, but I think they certainly apply.
But I love that you introduced me like that that you basically coined me as that, and I've since come around to the term thanks to you.
Good. So, and you can find my work at jamesbrowntv.substack.com. Also, anywhere online at James Brown TV, except for Threads, because I'm not going to Threads. I'm done with Threads. It's a line in the sand for me. I'm just not doing it. I'm too old, Sabby.
Oh my God.
I'm not. This is where I am on my lawn saying, look, I'm just not doing another social media site right now. I'm just not in the mood.
That should, I mean, gee, stop the presses. That should be, I mean, it's about age appropriate for where you're heading.
Yeah. Almost 40.
But, yeah.
No more from me.
For you.
Yeah. Also, I think I claimed my name on TikTok, but I've never used it. And I never downloaded it. So,
Again, good for you.
Okay. So what we're going to do here today is take a walk through about, I'd say at this point, 10 years of sports media history and land today. And we're going to see how this labyrinth of sports media mischief all sort of fits together. So we'll start with, I
mean, I have a meta question about all of this for you specifically.
Okay, yeah, sure.
As the media scholar, James Brown, which is what I coined you, the media obsessive media scholar. But I mean, I don't know if you want to start there.
Yeah, we can start there.
I mean, this over the last couple months, I mean, this is now something of an old story, but it made tons and tons of waves. This friction, and it built up over months too. And there were several points along the way that were flashpoints that were widely that were trending, that became memes. This friction between Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. This has spilled over into other media, sports media figures who are commenting on it, who know other people, also other media sports media figures who are taking swipes at each other. This incestuous web of people. There's all this talk about sports media ratings are going down. The whole industry, it seems to be headed towards some sort of bubble bursting. And yet these are trending stories online. And I just wanted your sense of, are you and I overinflating the how much these stories are actually moving the needle, or are they actually moving the needle? Because it seems like all these YouTube channels jump on this and they commentate, and all these other media platforms talk about these things all the time.
Your phrasing there is fascinating. Moving the needle. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't know. I guess, does that even exist?
That's the question that where I land. What are we describing when we say move the needle? Just in a broader sense, what's your gut reaction when I say that phrase?
Okay, something that registers broadly across culture, not just in the silo that the particular thing occurs in, right? So like if, I don't know, Jake Paul or somebody like that does something.
I mean, and you could argue that Jake Paul is bigger than all of this.
Sure. Okay, so maybe a different example. sticking to sports, or the sports media in particular, you know, how much do people actually still care in aggregate? But because I mean, this stuff does make the New York Post, or at least it's talked about on their website. I don't know how much it makes the actual print edition, right?
Oh, it makes the print edition.
How much are people like on the way or in barbershops or just texting each other? You know, what is the really what I'm saying is what is the state of sports commentary as a viable currency?
You're
Because it
asking a
seems like
bunch of different questions there, man.
yes, but moving the needle, I guess what I mean by that is in a broader sense, but I just
Hmm.
wrote a music piece
Hmm.
saying that the punchline of the music piece was that yes, there are really there's a much fewer and far between incidents of events that are shared as a mass, right?
Hmm.
That's almost non-existent now, but that in whatever particular world you're looking at, whether it's a band or whether it's a music in general or sports in general, these things can still feel like the earth is moving within those worlds, and I'm okay with that. I don't have any problem with that. I just wonder, is this a tempest in a teacup? And if you approach the average person on the street, would they be like, Skip who?
Yes.
Or okay, so you're saying yes. Or in my head, as I was balancing the sort of continuum of possibilities here, or is it a case that because these are football adjacent people and football is still massive, the most the biggest draw in American media, period, um, would they know Skip and Shannon and Stephen A just because of that?
Yes, but I think that's not what's happening.
Okay. Okay,
I
so
think there's a few things that I see. One uh is a phrase that I've used to you for a very long time. It's about Facebook. There's not one Facebook.
mhm,
There's nearly 2 billion Facebooks.
mhm,
Everybody is being fed an algorithm that's customized for them. Okay. So there is a slice of the media world and culture, the people who consume, and you consume this kind of content more than I do. Like
mhm.
I don't. I look at the meta stuff. I find fascinating, but the day to day content consumption, you enjoy listening to Undisputed
Mhm.
or First Things First or perhaps First Take. I don't know if you listen to First Take,
Not so much anymore.
but
No, but sports media is a daily, not so much in the summer, but during football season is a daily part of my what you refer to as a media diet.
well, yes, but let's back up a bit. You're not talking about sports media. You're talking
Right.
about a certain flavor and strand of sports media. I listen to sports media all the time. I don't listen to that flavor of sports
Mhm.
media.
Yes, and we know because so many times I text James these clips, and the answer I get back is yawn. So I don't really do it as much anymore.
Well, yeah, like this is as you mentioned my favorite term, media diet. We have more options today than ever before in terms of our media diets. We can consume sports media and we don't have to listen to the same stuff. This is not the era of syndicated radio
No.
where everybody, you're either listening to Jim Rome and you get the joke or you don't get the joke. No, I'm listening to other stuff. I'm and I think that there's the overwhelming large chunk of the sports media fandom. They're aware of these characters, but they don't care. The thing is, much like everything else in the internet world, hence the Facebooks, there's a slice that are hyper into it. So what happens is when things happen to them, that slice who either vehemently hate these people or are super into these people or just into the content, they get very, very active around any piece of content about this kind of content. So what happens is with the New York Post in particular, and other places that Sports Business Journal is another one. Front Office Sports is another one. I hate Front Office Sports. It's awful, but
lots of smaller channels as well.
Yeah, Awful Announcing is another one.
These kinds of events, and then generating traffic based on that is what I noticed. So I mean, absolutely. You talked about the smaller slice. I mean, what are we talking here? To me, it seems like somewhere in the hundreds of thousands of people.
More than that.
More, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're talking about. I'd say something like 5 million.
Okay. That who are willing to look at other YouTube or other online content and then be moved to comment on it, perhaps.
I think that's a smaller. When you get to the comment, and for those of you who don't know my background, I've worked in marketing, communications, digital marketing, social media marketing, journalism, in podcasting, all before.
You've never been actual broadcast, and you've been a reporter,
and actually
an
broadcast,
actual radio network, terrestrial radio network,
all that stuff.
Right.
So, that's what the getting a person to actually comment. It's a funnel. Like the vast majority of people will look at something and not comment.
Okay, so using the number of comments that you and I have just sort of anecdotally observed as something of a barometer, then you're saying there's millions of people. The slice of the pie is millions of people who care about these figures, like the FS1 and ESPN roster of people.
Yeah, well, and we're not talking about the full roster even. You got to be careful there. We're not talking about Kevin Nagandi. We're not even talking about Sage Steele, even though she's comes up in this saga at certain points. But like we're talking about these pundits who, as Tony Kornheiser has called it for a long time, yodel for a living. They're performing, and there are I think 5 million is just a number I pulled out of my ass, but I think it's single digit millions of people who have been exposed to this content and have a strong feeling about this content.
And enough people, again, for other people to capitalize and thus make it sound like, hey, there's been this shattering event. But see, coming at this from a slightly more personal perspective, what I observed in the comments is that people do form a personal attachment to these shows that they follow, and I'm one of them.
Yes.
And I like like when there was the discussion when Shannon Sharpe's last day on First Take, I think if I remember right, I was talking to you because there were a bunch of YouTube clips, and I was wondering the same thing, asking, was he sincere? Was that an act? Because he was crying. It would seem strange that he and Skip didn't even shake hands, at least on camera, anything like that. And you were like, you care entirely too much about these people or something like that. And it's not just me. I mean, that rapport, I've always said this to you, that I'm attracted to rapport between two co-hosts. And this goes back, the ultimate genesis story for all this is Siskel and Ebert, right? So once that model was created and it was deemed to be successful, I know you've told me that everything we're talking about owes its existence ultimately to Siskel and Ebert,
without a doubt.
So that rapport, that friction, that tension between these guys are disagreeing, and sometimes it spills over, and it seems like the vibes are kind of really a little bit tense between them. But then also there's like a human connection. When I watch these shows, I'm invested in that. I like to think these people actually have some sort of human connection. They're showing up to work together. So that's a part of it for me. And I've seen comments like that, as if it's almost like parents divorcing.
Yeah.
Not for me, but some people are like, man, I'm gonna miss this.
Yeah, for sure.
Together.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I think this is where we even have to back up just with and talk about the nature of passive media, because I think passive media has a power that intentional media, which we're also talking about in a different way, doesn't. And I'll define my terms. A passive media is you have a couple presets, and on the internet they call it the power of defaults, where you go to your car, and or you go to your favorite bar, or you turn on the TV. There's a reason why like one of the things that makes FS1's ratings depressed, lower than ESPN's ratings, is because of their prime time. ESPN has a ton of games on in prime time that get higher ratings than the rest of the day. And since we're humans and we very often will leave the TV on or not change the channel. So what happens is the next morning, there's a percentage of that audience that wakes up, they turn on the TV, and ESPN's still on. Yeah. And there's a large chunk of their rating success is based on that.
Wow.
And you can say that about any TV channel, basically.
And what you're saying is also radio, satellite, anything that somebody just has in the car, that's just when they turn that's playing.
Absolutely. You could also say that about, and let's just apply this to your computer. Bing's business model is, it's obviously owned by Microsoft, is their competitor for Google, right? Is that enough people will not change their default search engine for them to siphon billions of dollars of advertising, just because people won't change the channel. They won't adapt it. They don't go through the trouble.
They don't know how to.
Yeah. So there's a power, and that's when I get into the passive media. There's a power of being that person who's just there, and I have dealt with this a bit personally. I used to work in public radio. I haven't worked in public radio for about 1.5 years. I still run into people every month who think I'm still on the air there.
Well, and you also have followers from your USA Today podcast as well.
Yeah, but these are separate pods of people.
Sure,
I'm still in the town I was, Rochester, New York. But there are people who don't realize I'm gone, because they just sort of, the way we consume this media, we just assume that the person or thing that we watched, or the person we watched, is there, and they're just going to stay there. That's why when there's shuffles of schedules, say the Conan O'Brien thing back in the day with Jay Leno, right? Or going back further, Dave Letterman going to CBS was such a giant idea. Big deal. Because we as humans are just, change is difficult. And it goes back to that thing, the power of defaults. Like, we just think that, hey, it was this way, it's just going to stay this way. That's how we consume media passively. Now, enter this new paradigm where we're in. Think of where we're at right now. We're live on YouTube. You have to make a choice. In podcasting, you have to make a choice. Fewer people are going to make an actual choice. And when people make an actual choice, they're going to make it with passion. Those are the people who are more likely, whether it's actively avoiding the content or actively consuming the content. Those are the people. Those people are going to be more likely, because when you look at internet commenting in particular and interaction, the people who literally talk, the reason why it's overwhelmingly negative is that negative emotion
moves them, to motivates them
to say
to take
something.
the step. Right.
Yeah. So, and you can see that across the board with internet comments. That's why they're mostly negative. That's why so many news outlets have turned off comment sections, because it just attracts the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, it becomes a full-time job just to manage that stuff. And, you know, as staffs get smaller, you'd rather deal with other stuff. So to wrap this back in, we're in this new paradigm. And this is where this all ties together. All these outlets have massive online followings.
Mm-hmm.
And day to day, the people who download First Take and Undisputed dwarf the people who watch it on TV.
Right.
It's about 3 times from the last I saw on both sides.
Which is why comedian Andrew Schultz on his podcast argued with Akash Singh that even though FS1's ratings are a fraction of Undisputed's ratings are a fraction of First Takes on ESPN with Stephen A, that he felt Undisputed was more relevant online. So
yeah,
for whatever that's worth, I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree. Look, I think Shannon Sharpe in particular, leaving that program is such a massive, massive thing. A, because, you know, it's a 2-part harmony. You know, talk about going back to Siskel and Ebert, Skip and Shannon, Mike and Tony, you know, Mike and Mike. You go back and forth all the way back to Siskel and Ebert. That 2-part harmony is a thing.
Right.
And Shannon was incredibly memeable. All right. So we're in an era where Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, in order to get something trending, all you need is a few thousand or tens of thousands of people to be into something. You don't need millions. You just need tens of thousands of people.
But for it to be profitable, though, what do you need? What threshold do you need to meet? Because meme is one thing, but for it to serve your...
These shows are all wildly profitable.
But I don't understand that. If you're saying you only need tens of thousands, because what?
They're cheap as fuck to make.
Right, but if you only need tens of thousands to be a meme, I would think you need more than that for advertisers to.
No. Okay, so you're conflating 2 different things here, right? So, all right, making the show as a TV product, right? Let's talk about what goes into making Undisputed. You have 3 on-air talent salaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a staff of, let's say, 20. Okay. So the on-air talent, Skip is, last I saw, Skip was making around 7. Shannon was making 4 or something in that range. And no doubt, whoever replaced Joy Taylor, I don't know what her name is, but that they put in a little box somewhere.
Not Jenny Taft. Is it Jenny
Taft? Is making probably a couple $100,000.
Right.
All right.
That's what I would assume, but I don't know.
If you put together all the staff salaries, let's say it's $1 million, or let's say it's a couple $1 million. All right. And you have a set. You have 1 set. Oh, and by the way, those cameramen, I don't know this for sure, but my bet is they don't only work on Undisputed. My guess is that they're probably working on First Things First too, or what's the
Collins
other show?
Show is in the same studio.
Or Collins.
First Things First is in New York, so that
Whatever. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So
Collins shows right
follow.
before, and then it's in the same studio. You can see it in the background, and I
Okay.
would presume you can just slide the cameras over, or so. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because like I know when I've worked in local TV, that's the way it worked. Like basically, like you'll have like your anchor set over here, and you'll have your other set over here, and you have your other set over here, and it's all in one big room. It's not always that way, but
But I mean, it's definitely in the same facility. It's definitely the same room, basically.
Yeah.
Or in adjacent rooms.
Yeah. And and it's adaptable. It's easily, I think it's easy to go. And by the way, cameramen, even cable cameramen, are not paid that. It's not a crazy amount of money these guys are making.
Hmm.
All right. So, and they make what 2.5 hours of TV a day for probably, let's say, there's 52 weeks of the year. Let's say they are original 44 weeks a year. There's 5 shows in every week.
Mm-hmm.
You're just, so let's say conservatively you're investing roughly $12 million to run the show. Let's say $13 million, something like that.
Okay.
No doubt that show is making that money back in spades. They're making at least 4 times that.
Through what revenue? Advertising.
A couple different ones.
But what are the revenue streams, and how does memeing? Because when a Shannon Sharpe meme goes out, it's not off of one of their platforms.
Remember, I told you that you're talking about 2 different things here.
Yes, but I'm
talking about one. I'll explain the money. The money is mostly in one thing. And this speaks to the whole problem here, and why you're seeing things are getting really messed up right now. Not just with this world, but the media world at large, because of that very question you asked. All right.
How'd you monetize when you're
I'll get there.
currency? Right.
Yeah. But let me explain where the money is. There's with cable, there's a guaranteed amount of money. You negotiate your carriage fees for a set amount of years, anywhere from 5 to 10 year long contracts. So FS1 is getting a guaranteed amount of money, with a mix, a guarantee that they have to create a certain amount of live program, a certain amount of live sports. They're connected. They're sold in a package with FS2 and Fox News and other Fox-owned channels.
Sorry. So regardless of whether cable numbers or subscriptions to that package or to those packages dip over those years, they're still making the same. They're still guaranteed the same money.
Well, they're going to have to pay the piper eventually, which speaks to the larger problem and why things are so crazy, and why you got Bob Iger, who runs Disney, talking about bringing in a strategic partner for ESPN, talking to leagues about investing in the ESPN, talking about selling ABC to venture capitalists possibly, and all sorts of things. Like because they're going to have to pay the piper, because when they made these deals, we were talking about 90 million homes, 80 million homes. And where we're headed is probably closer to 50.
Right, which is why, and you're going to get into this.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure you're going to play this part of the clip, but why Stephen A. Smith bragging that we're still in 70 million homes and we're still number 1 by a long shot. To me, that rung completely hollow, and like somebody who doesn't understand isn't letting on. But
or he's just not saying it. If you look at his actions, he understands.
Okay. Well, that's what I mean. Maybe he does understand and isn't letting on. But yes,
his actions are very different from what he said in that clip. Because and this was very clear in the Bill Simmons interview that I did not clip up for this. But he very much wants to own something that's separate from ESPN.
Sure.
And he wants to do that for a reason. And that's all the stuff that I'm meandering my way toward. So all right. So they're sold as part of a cable bundle. Yes, there's some deprecation of money because of those fees going away, but the biggest blocks of them are there and are going to be there. All right. And if you look at Disney, the contracts are all different. They're negotiated at different points.
Okay.
I don't know their exact deal point.
And we're talking years from now, is what you're saying for at least for FS1. Like in the case of FS1, we're talking years.
Probably because their deals with different cable distributors are different.
Okay.
Like they're like the deal they do with Spectrum versus the deal they do with Charter or Comcast, they're all different.
Okay.
And they're all made at different times.
But what you're saying is there does appear to be some sort of panic, at least at ESPN. I mean, we just saw a bunch of layoffs and
not just at ESPN.
Okay.
But ESPN is the most pronounced.
Right, because they have the highest, the furthest to fall from where.
And ESPN's also was and I still think is the highest paid per subscriber on cable media. I believe they got up to around $9 subscriber. For instance, TNT costs something like $2.
Okay.
And they were at $9. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. They were printing money. All these places printing money, and that was just their undergirding. And that's before you sell ads or sponsorships. And I don't really watch Undisputed, but I would expect there's probably some sponsorship integration, probably. But I don't know. I know that other shows, ESPN does it all the time. But yeah. So you got all that. All right. So they're no doubt flush. All right. Just from that show. And it's their highest rated show as well. So that's one.
Okay.
That's one like tranche. Okay. Then we get over to the meme stuff. How do you grow an audience today?
Well, that's a good question. That's why I come here. It's like a classroom. So
you grow an audience today by making a mark online.
Sure.
They have the consistent content, the memes, Shannon Sharpe showing up with a goat head on,
sure, and a cigar, and Uncle Shay,
and the whole presentation allows a bunch of countless dollars of free advertising on social media networks.
Duh. Okay, that's what it is. It's like free ads. The memes are like free ads, and you're saying some of those people come over to the actual.
No.
Platform. Oh.
Some of those people go to the podcast.
No. That's what I'm saying. To their platform, to their online platforms like YouTube
those are two different things. Very two different things. Because the level, as you mentioned earlier, I was part of a podcast for a pretty big organization, and I'll actually speak. I'll quote a boss, not a boss there, but a previous boss. At my previous job in public media, where she called, we're trading analog dollars for digital pennies.
Okay.
So with radio, TV, newspaper, you got dollars. With digital, you got pennies. So that the thing that got this, me going off on this jag was you talking about the people who online who really, really care. Yeah, they care, and they care enough to watch on YouTube. By the way, Shannon's goodbye. Someone ripped the video, and that's a more watched video than what FS1 posted.
All right. Doesn't surprise me.
But
you called that free advertising though. So where does it translate to to profit,
Hits
what is it advertised? I know people will go to the podcast and the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about.
That's the problem. And that's the basis of the panic that's going on in all of media right now.
Yeah, I was going to say,
especially sports media.
It should be all kinds of anything that you're putting out there because moving the needle, as we talked about earlier, is still difficult to monetize, it sounds like.
You're talking about digital pennies instead of analog dollars.
So all of this, I mean, I remember you brought this up back in, I believe it was 2016, when we were talking about a new Tribe Called Quest and 9 Inch Nails albums that were out around the same time, Thanksgiving or so. I might be smushing them together. I know the 9 Inch Nails was out around Thanksgiving, but there was a new Tribe Called Quest album, and it was generating a lot of attention in my sphere, music journalism. And you were doubtful that really meant much of anything, that it actually signified that the band was still as important as it was being made to seem, that there was a small cluster of people basically curating that impression, or they might just really be into it, a group of editors on these mostly blog platforms.
Sure.
Professional blogs, not blogs from 2013 where it's just independent, but like these music platforms online, music sites. And that's the world we live in now. It just makes me wonder what's really, you said there's 2 billion or whatever Facebook pages. You've also said before, we're all content creators, and I'll go a step further from what you said and say we're all unwitting media platforms or networks without even necessarily knowing that that's what we are, because we are being broadcast to in a way that's customized to be personal without our actual active driving the personal process. Although I guess there's some degree of us being active. I mean, you subscribe to things and but it's curated for you, so your sense of what the world looks like and what's moving the needle is based on sort of like an internal network bias that you don't even know you're the prime partner in that network. You're not profiting, but you're somewhere in the structure of that network. You're the main focus of it.
You hit on a couple things. So let's talk about the big question there, right? How do you get the profit? How are these people getting the profit?
From memes, from when Unc Shay is a cigar and that becomes ski or whatever,
He's a great example because of what he appears to be doing next. There's been talk about him and FanDuel. FanDuel being, a digital betting platform. He, from what I understand, Club Shay Shay, his podcast, actually passed Undisputed in terms of downloads.
Right, get something like 1 million per show or something.
It was more than that. Like it was crazy. That was one of the things that I was reading online. At minimum, there's parity, right? And if you look at Club Shay Shay, it's shot at his house. It's like there's literally like 2-3 cameras, a couple mics. That's it. And he has a guest, and he's got an endless Rolodex. And who doesn't want to go on Club Shay Shay? I don't even like him, and I'd go on Club Shay Shay.
Why don't you like him? Just out of curiosity.
I find him annoying.
How?
I don't find him enlightening on any level. I never felt like I learned from Shannon Sharpe. Like when I look at my sports media, this is why I hate this whole debate show, Jamie Horowitz, Skip and Shannon infused strain of Embrace Debate TV, is I don't learn from it.
So does Dan Lebatard, hates it too, apparently, which we're going to get to.
Yeah, we'll get there for sure. And Lebatard's also in this conversation because he's doing the same thing that Shannon's doing, that Kay Adams is doing, that Pat McAfee did, ESPN is doing also.
Right.
Which is why if you listen to ESPN executives, they're paying Pat McAfee $18 million a year. They're claiming that they expect to make that money back. Very interesting. McAfee had a deal. I believe it was it with FanDuel?
It was because this is being spoken about as if now there's a vacated spot in FanDuel's.
Yeah.
Whatever you
that
call it.
was paying him what? Oh, it was a 120 over 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where do you think ESPN is going to get that money?
I don't know.
I think it's going to be FanDuel. Or DraftKings.
Oh, by getting them to come over
Penn.
to sponsor his show? Is that what you're getting at?
So what's happening here is that these outlets, they have traded digital analog dollars for digital pennies, like we all have. And in order to get that money back, they need strategic investors, and they're going to sell their audience to people who are flush with cash.
So really interesting, because what you're saying is that the move, because that I did find that puzzling.
Dan Lebatard is doing the same thing, by the way.
Okay, so
he can talk as progressive as he wants, but he's selling his audience to, gambling. He's on the DraftKings network.
Right.
It's the seed money for his company.
Sure. Wow, this is really complex. And hard to kind of wrap my head around. I think it's hard to wrap our heads around.
Sure.
Just collectively, unless you really pay attention to the machinations of media.
I can't help it. I do.
Right, as much as you do, but it's like ESPN signing or bringing Pat McAfee back is kind of like them attempting to co-opt the momentum of these independent shows that they no longer have, and bringing a sponsor that was willing to pony up all this money for a show like McAfee's, and sort of bringing that back under their roof. It seems like.
Kinda. I think I don't think they're dumb enough to believe that that's true, but yeah, I think that's you could look at it that way. I mean, because I think that McAfee, there's so many people trying to fill that space now, that I don't think that that they're just going to be able to co-opt that McAfee thing. I think the next McAfees will emerge.
Well, and I also think ESPN is bound to fuck it up. Whatever formula made his show successful on an independent basis and popular and connect with an audience, I think they won't be able to help themselves in ruining that. It's like proverbial record label saying, "Yeah, we want you to do what you do," and then they don't do that.
It's fascinating that you say that, because that's something that Stephen A. Complained about with Bill Simmons. It's what Dan Lebatard, Amin Elhassan, Jamel Hill all bring up in different ways, and essentially about dealing with the apparatus that is ESPN. That like they're just bound by their own dogma, and they don't know how to handle anything else.
Right. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens to his show. I think it won't. It'll
do okay.
But it won't.
I think it'll broaden his audience a bit.
Well, that's what he's counting on. It will broaden his audience, but will it sacrifice much of the audience that got him there? And does that matter?
I don't think it matters, and I don't think he's counting on that.
You don't think he's counting on what specifically?
On it broadening his audience.
So
I think he's counting on I don't have to worry about things like insurance. I don't have to run my own company.
Right. Wasn't
Like
he vocal about complaining that it like
it's
consumes all of his attention and
as has Dan Lebatard has been, as have other people who sort of have done these ventures. When you try to do your own thing, you're an independent contractor yourself, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
not nearly not even
and you don't have a bunch of employees, right? So like,
no.
but when you're worried about, hey, I am going to try to attract employees and keep employees, they're they're heavy as the head that wears the crown.
Well, and also it's more so the case the more successful you get, I would think. I mean, yes, insurance and employees and salaries and things like that, that's an issue when you don't have a following. But I would imagine it also gets exponentially more complicated
Uh,
when you
Not
do.
not yeah, I think it's maybe. Plus, you're
But
worried about things like sponsorships. You're worried about making more money. Like instead, you have an apparatus that's focused on making more money. But you don't have to worry about all these things. You don't have to worry about getting the segment sponsored. You don't have to do the meetings. You don't have to. Dan Patrick ended up doing a deal where he has his own school of broadcasting. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
He wouldn't, if he was still at ESPN, he wouldn't be worried about things like that. Like like there's a whole, you are, when you are running a small business, even if it's a large business like McAfee, obviously he had that money guaranteed, and he had plus sponsorship revenue, plus revenue from YouTube, plus revenue
But
from
it's still
Sirius
small business.
XM. We're talking, what we're also talking about, probably at least $120 million business.
Right. It's
Uh,
still small in the sense that it's an independent
Yeah,
business.
yeah, and we're talking like 20 employees.
Right. It started out as a mom and pop shop, even
Yeah,
though it grew, and and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
for sure.
profitable.
Like,
But
yeah, like there's a lot there. That's part of it. Also, he's been thirsty to be center stage at ESPN for years. And ESPN's like, hey, like, we'll not only pay you most of what they're gonna pay you, we'll take all the responsibility off you, and you just be Pat. And
right.
we'll take care of your boys. We'll get your boys, like we'll spin them off into their own shows, and like you'll just be center stage, and we don't actually have to try to go through the process of actually developing radio shows and actually like being a creative process. We'll just plop you here, and we'll pay you, and we'll put you on everywhere which way we can, as we move to this process where we're gonna like be top heavy and focus on 7, 8 personalities and nobody else.
Hmm.
And that's what they're doing. That's been their move for the last few years. They're gonna pay the people who are the quote unquote needle movers, and put them everywhere. Greenberg, for some odd reason.
Yeah, you've never been a
Um,
fan, and I'm not a
Scott
bit
Van
super
Pelt is on this
um,
list.
right.
For he's okay. Obviously, guys like Stephen A, Buck and Aikman, Pat McAfee, and we're gonna put them everywhere. We're gonna produce gobs and gobs of content around them, and then we're gonna nuke our middle class and have a bunch of people that we can pay a few $100,000 to, and they'll be happy.
But then they're also letting their up class like Stephen A have their own ownership of platforms as well. So this
That's
is
I think that's only because like like I said, they've made a decision that they're not trying to develop stars. Like they're not, at least not to the level that they used to.
hmm.
So like you want to keep Stephen. Why not keep Stephen A happy? So what? He wants to make a little podcast. It's analog dollars versus digital pennies. Let him go make his digital pennies. I'm not saying it's the right way to be thinking. I'm saying that's the way that their actions say that they're going.
Right. I think it's a resigned. It seems to me like it's a resigned way of thinking. We're not going to win this fight, so we're not going to try to own everything this person does. I mean, I feel like Shannon Sharpe, whatever he negotiates next, he'll have ownership of Club Shay Shay.
Yeah, he'll keep Club Shay Shay.
Exactly. He's not going to give that up for whatever move he makes.
He'll produce that show. From what I understand, he's brought one of the producers, a couple of the producers from Undisputed with him, and they'll make that show. He'll have his own little small biz, and if he is smart, he probably he'll have an infrastructure, better infrastructure than McAfee does. And because from what I understand, McAfee was very hands-on with all that stuff. But if you are, for another example, Kevin Durant has his own media company and has all these business ventures. I think it's called Uninterrupted, in the boardroom. And he has a business partner who was his agent, this guy by the name of Rich Kleinman.
Mm-hmm.
And Rich is taking care of the business. And Kevin Durant plays basketball.
Sure. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't know why. I think
Last
McAfee maybe didn't expect it to grow to the point that it did, maybe.
Possibly, yeah.
I
haven't heard him ask that question. But yeah.
Doesn't seem like he planned for the contingency of success.
Yeah.
Or success on a bigger scale than what, I mean, he obviously had a bunch of people there, so I know he was thinking he had to pay these people.
Well, I mean, with McAfee, they go back to his Barstool days. So when he retired early because he was offered another contract with the Colts as a punter, he opted to go to Barstool. And as his show gained traction with Barstool, who, by the way, also is now owned by a gambling company, Penn. McAfee, he built out a staff. He wanted to do it in Indianapolis. He didn't want to move. He had a big house there. Like, why move? I don't have to move.
Right. Is that like his actual basement? It looks like it.
No.
Okay.
But he built out a staff, and like, why not keep him? And I think over time, it's kind of like Dan Patrick's crew, or most of Stern's crew was this way too. Over time, you gain success, you build out a staff, you keep your staff, they're loyal to you, and you basically you start, the load ends up pretty large over time.
Right. So,
yeah, this went in directions I did not expect.
No, so I mean, it's and outside of the it's not like we went too far off, because there's this aspect of it, and then there's the emotional charge that these things have, not only for their core audience, but across media, among the peers of the people who are being talked about, right?
Yeah.
So you've got this is in this timeline somewhere. You've got someone like Matt Barnes saying that somebody's going to roll up on Skip and hurt him, and this is prior to the split with Shannon. You've got Jason Whitlock calling Matt Barnes an idiot for saying so, and going off on him. Now, Matt Barnes has worked with both Skip and Jason, and been very buttoned up in those environments. He goes back and forth between ESPN and FS1, and he's he's allowed to do that kind of as a free agent. And then he has all the smoke. Steven Jackson was on shows with both of them as well. And so there's this
Tension.
there's obviously this chord that this struck, right? Which I think you either laugh at or you're not personally invested in, but you recognize from sort of more the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, because we're seeing variations of this in basically every version of mass media.
Okay, and I'm really curious about that. Because the Skip and Shannon split, and even prior to it. So this goes back to, I believe it was December.
Yeah.
When DeMar Hamlin had what is widely reported.
No, I believe it was that was January.
Okay. So there was something else. This had been building for a while. There had been friction that was noticeable on air, but then it really came to a head. No. The December clip was when the Tom Brady, you're just jealous because you're not as good as him, which is an outrageous, like juvenile, idiotic statement. And there's another aspect to this that I want to point out, but Skip and Shannon are talking about Tom Brady, and the two figures they fight about the most are LeBron James and Tom Brady. Skip is, of course, like a complete fanboy, 12-year-old, sounds like a kid, like a child with sports posters in his room. What do you mean, when someone criticizes Tom Brady? However, Shannon sounded the exact same way talking about LeBron James.
He always does.
Ironically, part of what exacerbated this friction, or perhaps even generated this friction, is their fanboy, like the fanboy in both of them. And as Jason Whitlock pointed out, no, it was Kwame Brown. Excuse me, it was Kwame Brown. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, want me to just play that clip?
Yeah. Because this has been in what I thought was kind of like a shot heard around the world in a certain sphere of, it's not
God. Yeah, you are clearly like, I as you said, I've said it's a lot. You are too invested in this stuff.
It's not on the same level as when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars, but it's the sports. It's this lane's equivalent of that. Put your glasses back on.
Yeah, I don't know if I got the put your glasses back on part, but I do have.
It should be right in this. It should be right in this.
Okay.
Hate by a guy who's jealous that he's still playing at a high level at 45 when you had to stop at 35.
Yeah, that's what you do.
That's the point.
That's what you do. Every time I call something into question, I'm jealous.
No,
yeah, I did what I did.
I never said you were jealous of Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I did what I did. You make it seem like I was a bum. I'm in the effing Hall of Fame.
Okay,
I got 3 Super Bowls.
So what?
So what?
He's way better than you were.
I'm better than
way
you.
Better.
Yeah, what? I got to see what you do. You take personal shots.
No, I don't take personal shots. You started it.
Time out. You would take a personal shot at me.
I didn't take a personal shot at you.
Wait a minute.
What are you talking about?
You would take a personal.
Put your glasses back on.
Can I finish? You're willing to take a personal shot at me to say this man is better than me because I say he's playing bad this year?
Well, because you just
go ahead.
You disrespect him. It's just so. You know what? It's beneath your dignity.
You would disrespect me to support him.
Well, tell us why this was a shot heard around the world, Savvy.
Because it registered on a deeper. It was perceived as a white guy who's someone's boss, essentially, which he is.
Well, not essentially. I mean, like he is his boss.
Flexing in a way that was just uncool and inappropriate, and like, and for all the people who like to accuse Shannon Sharpe of being a coon and all this stuff and sucking up to a white guy, it just had that overtone to it although Warren Sapp said he didn't, this is just one example, when DJ Vlad was like trying to, like talk about this, Warren Sapp said, no, I didn't take it that way. What I saw was, listen, put your glasses back on. We're not fighting about this. Because taking his glasses off, Warren Sapp was saying it's kind of like a sign of like aggression, like I'm about to throw down or something. I don't know. I don't know. That seems like a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Was Skip throwing his weight around like, yo, get your black ass back in line kind of a thing? I don't see it that way, but it clearly was reverberated that way.
And clearly Shannon saw it that way. And that's what's most important in this.
Did he? Did he see it he saw it as being disrespected?
Well, maybe not the racial component of that, but the fact that like this essentially led to their spiral in their marriage being broken up. I mean, it's clearly that he felt like he felt wronged.
Yes. So I just want to, as counterweight to all this, so that was fucked up. And I also thought it was very, just almost like retarded for a guy who didn't do anything in his sport. I mean, didn't get off the ground in, like, I believe it was high school or college, or I think he started a little bit in college, which we'll get to the Jalen Rose clip from almost 10 years ago or however long.
You want to go to Jalen? You want to go to Jalen next?
Yeah, but I kind of just want to set the stage a little bit, because for someone in that position to say so what to someone as accomplished as Sharpe is on its face absurd, until you remember that for whatever reason, these people in these positions are encouraged by their networks, or given license. I don't know if they're technically encouraged, but they are certainly given license to speak from their irrational fandom, right? Like it seems like these networks like these guys to be sort of sober, at least present as sober analysts, but then have one area where they're completely biased beyond the pale of any reason. And so that's what we're talking about here. And let's not forget, Shannon Sharpe was moved by his LeBron James fanboy streak to get on the court and almost get into a physical altercation with an entire basketball team.
Wasn't that a couple of months later?
It was right around that same time.
Yeah.
Like, it was close enough that it was
when it was
like,
in the knit shawl.
What on earth would possess you to even go there? So it's like Shannon's ready to throw down for his fandom, and Skip is willing to say, so what? So what did you do? To me, that was a very boyish, childlike, in the moment, off the cuff. And Skip Bayless, I am a fan of Skip Bayless. It does not seem like they were handing out much self-awareness that day when he was born, or if they were, he didn't get any of it. Because like, you started it.
You mean that moment?
Yes, that moment. And so how odd this is, though, right? That this is sort of what, because I don't think Shannon was ever disrespectful to Skip on LeBron's behalf, but I mean, it's like, I do have a lot of respect for him as a broadcaster and as an analyst and as a commentator. I thought everything that comes out of his mouth when it comes to LeBron is basically worthless. It's like listening to a child with the posters in their room, like fawning.
I see that as his, the entirety of their, their production that way. But that's just, me. I see it all as just a complete and utter, anybody who does this is like, they're playing a game. It is a part. It's not journalism. It's not, it is entertainment.
But he means it enough. But he means it enough that he's willing to get into a fight. He's not being insincere. He might be playing it up.
But I mean, I think this is we're taking a detour here, but like there are other stuff going on with the Grizzlies in the Laker game, because you had the Grizzlies who had this reputation for getting in fights with people. You had Ja Morant's dad, who was part of this whole scenario, and Ja Morant, who had his own issues,
of course,
this year, was also a part of this
threatening,
scenario.
menacing behavior, gunplay, all sorts of shit like that.
Yeah, like he apparently once he pointed a real gun at his phone on IG, and then he pointed a toy gun at his phone on IG as well, on Instagram, and also his compadres apparently also pointed a laser pointer,
a laser sighter,
a
gun sight
at an opposing team's bus. Like, so like there's a bunch of stuff going on there, and I don't think it's quite as relevant, but I get what you mean about, like, look, these are he is living the gimmick.
See, you're saying that
he's living the gimmick.
I don't know. Yes, he's living, but I'm saying he's a fan enough that he cares this much. I don't know what he's not immune
to live
to
the
that.
gimmick. He's Hulk Hogan, still dyeing his hair.
I disagree there.
Wearing the bandana.
I disagree.
Going by Hulk Hogan instead of Terry Bollea.
Look, that's passion right there. That's performative, but he is fan.
I can say the same thing about Hulk Hogan.
But what I'm saying is his fandom is real. That's not concocted. That's not for effect. He dresses it up for effect, but his fandom is real.
About Ric Flair. Have you seen Ric Flair recently?
No. But I heard somebody say that they put old classic wrestlers on the side of trucks now because they know people are gonna recognize those older wrestlers, and like they don't, like, if the newer ones leave, they don't have to worry about taking them off the trucks or something. Anyway, if the guy got up out of his seat and was like huffing and puffing like he was gonna fight, that to me is not living a gimmick. That's like, this dude cares about LeBron James too much. He's a Swiftie for LeBron James.
Yeah,
he's a Bayhive guy.
That's his gimmick.
No, he's not living a gimmick. He's a Bayhive equivalent for LeBron James.
That's his gimmick. That's his gimmick. That's the role I think playing real on the show.
No. You're saying,
and I think honestly, this speaks to a larger thing that I believe about all these shows that obviously you don't, and we've had this discussion several times. Well, we could do a variation of this now, sure, but look, I think that these people, they know it's all a performance. That they're willing to do the sideshow. They know they're in the circus.
I think that's true to a degree. I think that's definitely true to a degree, but I think there's something maybe you're overlooking a little bit. When you play one of the two major sports, which unfortunately used to be 4, but now it's just whittled down to 2.
You're just thinking football and basketball?
Yeah. I mean, when you play football or basketball or any real major professional sport, let's just leave it at that.
I disagree
your fandom,
with you,
hold on.
That,
your fandom for that sport gets basically crushed, right? You can't really be a fan of football the same way you would have been as a kid once you play it, and the same goes for basketball. You see how the sausage is made too much.
Sure.
However, you're going to glom onto being a fan of another sport more because you can still have that for that other sport. So there's probably not many people that Shannon looks up to the same way he did when he was a teenager, but he can still preserve that same energy towards LeBron James, and it comes off terrible. It comes off horrible. I find that completely ridiculous and uninteresting and kind of just juvenile. But I think it's real. What's that?
Like the rest of his content.
I don't feel that way, but that's fine. I think it's real. There's an aspect of it that's played up, but it's an exaggeration of something that's actually there. I think Skip obviously performs his Dallas Cowboys love, but there's something real to it. That Tom Brady thing. So now you were saying when these things happened, and the one thing with the Tom Brady clip, and then boy, Kwame Brown tore him up over this, and I thought it was well deserved.
So what were you saying?
Well, was that, the DeMar Hamlin clip?
Yeah,
you're saying when these spats happened on air, the friction was too much for it to be them just acting. Like it spilled over into something.
Well,
more...
let's go. Let's show it. And and let's see
right.
The DeMar clip. And for those who don't know, I am a nutty Bills fan.
So let's not catch you on the sideline trying to get into a fight with a Bills opponent.
The Bengals.
Yeah.
Understand? You have something you want to share this morning?
Good morning. Yes. Morning. There's been a lot of speculation of why I wasn't on air yesterday, and I won't get into speculation or conjecture, innuendo, but I will say this. Watching that game on Monday night, what happened to DeMar Hamlin struck me a little different. As a brotherhood in the NFL, when injuries happen, when we know injuries are a part of the game, I've seen guys suffer ACLs and Achilles tear, but I've never seen anybody have to be revived and fight for their life on the field. So it struck me a little differently because I remember seeing my brother paralyzed on the field temporarily, and he was able to regain focus. Skip tweeted something, and although I disagree with the tweet, and hopefully Skip would take it down, but I didn't want it.
Well, time out. I'm not going to take it down because I stand by what I tweeted.
Skip, let me finish.
All right. Okay.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Go ahead. Let's go, Jen.
Okay.
I mean, I cannot even get through a monologue without you interrupting me.
Well,
you could have came back, Skip.
Well, I thought,
Skip, just let.
I didn't know you were going to bring up.
No, I was just going to say, Skip, I didn't want to yesterday to get into a situation where DeMar Hamlin was the issue. We should have been talking about him and not get into your tweet. That's what I was going to do. But you can't even let me finish my opening monologue without you interrupting.
Okay. I was under the impression you weren't going to bring this up because nobody here had a problem with that tweet.
No. Clearly, the bosses wanted you to offer explanation. So clearly, somebody.
No, they did not have. Nobody.
Let's go, Jen.
Woo.
Thoughts and prayers remain with DeMar Hamlin.
And not on the football game. Yes, let's go, Jen. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here from this.
There sure is a lot to unpack here. Let me start by saying first, I hate the direction this story took. I hate that Skip was vilified for that tweet. Because, first of all, the tweet is out of context. There's a tweet before that where he couches it more softly and he expresses concern. Secondly, every fucking person watching that game was asking the exact same question. So to frame this as if he was being insensitive is just wrong. He was not being insensitive at all. He was just wondering logistically, well, how the hell are they going to do this now that this event of such an extraordinary magnitude happened? Now, what I will say is this. He has dehumanized athletes before, most notably his, the quarterback to his supposed favorite team, Dak Prescott, when Dak Prescott's brother took his own life, and then when Dak Prescott confessed to having depression and needing therapy. I mean, Skip came off as a complete dipshit like a cave, somebody from like decades ago who didn't understand. He's like, all right, come on, just play, just whatever, just play. Like, but that was not what happened here. And you have to be selective and try to read it this way in order for that to happen. In fact, Jason Whitlock went so far as to say that Shannon sold Skip out by pandering to that narrative. So that's what I have to say about that. I didn't see anything wrong with that tweet. It was perfectly within bounds, not saying that this young man's life wasn't important. It was just like, well, fuck, now we have this elephant in the room, this glaring logistical issue. What's wrong with that tweet?
For those who are listening to us and only listening to us, let's read the tweet. You mind reading the tweet, Savvy?
All right. So which one? Okay. So the one on the bottom is, oh no. Okay. So I think there's one before the no doubt the NFL is considering.
Well, go for the ones on the screen and I'll try to find the other one.
Yeah, please, because I mean there's one that sets up the first one.
But
it's gonna
read what's on the screen and
okay.
I'll find it.
Okay, so no doubt the NFL is considering postponing the rest of this game, but how? This late in the season, a game of this magnitude is crucial to the regular season outcome, which suddenly seems so irrelevant. Then the next tweet. Nothing is more important than that young man's health. That was the point of my last tweet. I'm sorry if that was misunderstood, but his health is all that matters. Again, everything else is irrelevant. I prayed for him and will continue to do so. So I could be mistaken that there's a tweet before the first one, but which suddenly seems so irrelevant to me. I know what he's saying there. It's very apparent what he's saying. Like, whoa, this is beyond the scale that we were expecting, but then how the hell is the league going to handle this? That's fine. Why was that an issue? And why did everyone jump on that as if he just didn't care? To me, that seems completely unfair. And it's a stretch.
This gets back to what I was saying about living the gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
Skip Bayless is also living the gimmick.
Of course.
Living the gimmick 24/7. And he can't help but come out and he's got to tweet the gimmick. He has to post on IG the gimmick. He has to do the deep sigh and do the rants. It's a 24/7 game. It used to be that in back in the old analog passive media days that you could turn off the gimmick and walk away.
Just did it while you were on the air.
And then you could walk away. Instead, what we've looked at, with those two, with their arguments, and with looking at Shannon, and looking at Skip tweeting that hey, look, I got to live up. I have to be this clown as Mark Maron used to call it for every comedian. Like every comedian has their clown, that they have to be this clown, this thing, this projection in relationship things. And I've used it in a recent podcast, this phrase called the representative. Representative is not you. When you're on a first date with somebody, that's not you.
No.
That's this projection of what you want to show the world at that time, what you want them to see.
Right. It's on like a dimmer switch, because even now the projection is not us in our full. It's not each one of us. Like even what we're doing now, there's a dimmer switch. Is we're showing a certain amount of you.
Because of all the media changes that I discussed in the first hour of this marathon here, they are constantly projecting that gimmick.
Right. Marcellus said, and Marcellus knows them both, Marcellus Wiley, another media figure, said, who I'm a big fan of, said, this is a case of their two characters rubbing up against each other and not the two actual people. And interestingly enough, he said Skip is actually a very compassionate, caring person. But that you don't see that. Well, not compassionate enough to give his co-host equal say in the direction of the show. That's kind of fucked up.
Look, he didn't do that with Stephen A. either.
I mean, is he in a position to deserve that?
Well, he was. Like, look, if you're Skip, like he was back there where he saved that show back when it was Cold Pizza.
Okay, but I mean, I don't think that's a very compassionate thing to do once you realize the person you're working with has grown into.
This ain't show friends. This is show business.
I get it, but it backfires, right? You thought Fox made a mistake by letting FS1 or by letting Shannon Sharpe go.
but absolutely they did.
But it backfires if the tension between the co-hosts grows to a point where the show implodes or their partnership implodes. So would it not behoove someone like Skip to be like, "Hey, you're doing more, so let me."
Let's get back to the question with all the money issue, right? And the fact that they know that there's a ticking time clock in the background to know that, hey, this free money we've been printing, it's starting to go away.
Yeah.
And the question I think that I do stand by what I've told you privately, which is I think you should have gone with the 50-year-old instead of the 70-year-old.
50 ultimate memeable, meme factory.
Who's made for the next media world. Or you keep him somehow, some way, instead of, maybe you don't have him on Undisputed. Maybe you spin off a show. Maybe it's a lead-in show for Undisputed. Maybe you cut Undisputed in half, and you have Shannon, you have Club Shay Shay, and you have Skip and whoever, and Richard Sherman, or whoever it is ends up with him leading into Club Shay Shay, and you end up with a stronger schedule for it. Like there's a million different things you can do. My guess is that for the first time in that company's history, since they've taken this tack of embrace debate and doing an all day media yada yada, they're worried about money.
Worried about money enough that they're not seeing the bigger picture of what this is going to cost them in the future?
No. They're worried about whether it'll exist anymore or how long it's going to exist.
So then why would you go with Skip if that's what you're worried about?
Because you were able to build something around Skip once. And Skip
he's done it twice.
Yeah. No. I'm talking about on Fox.
Sure, they did it once, but they can also look at this was he did it before. Right.
And if you look at Shannon's TV track record was not great. He was on CBS. He was on the their NFL Today show. He did okay. Remember, it was his first real national TV gig.
Right.
He got better toward the end of the run, but no one was eager to give him a job.
No.
Prior to this.
And so I see that. I can sort of see this in music, like the same exact plays out in music. You have an established star, brings on a co-writer, or in this case, not a co-writer, but a bandmate, who then starts to draw as much attention. And the star says, well, listen, I'm the one that brought you in. But the bandmate is like, well, I've grown in my role. I'm just as important as you. I'm not sure these conversations happen between them, but that's sort of the paradigm that you can apply that paradigm in several different fields. Yes, and I think this boils down to something that we don't know how well Undisputed is going to do, or the Skip brand is going to do after this. We also don't know how well Shannon Sharpe is going to do in this embrace debate kind of setting if he goes towards that.
Well, that's the question. We know how well he did in this embrace debate setting.
But we know how he did with this host.
No,
I think
we know. Like he did it for what, 5 years? We know.
Almost seven.
7 years.
No. Here's my point. The only person I've seen point this out is Andrew Schultz. What in this vilification of Skip, and yes, I think he plays into that. I think he is living the gimmick. I don't think those tweets were living the gimmick, by the way. So I would counter that there.
I have done on Jim Rome shows.
What I think he doesn't get enough credit for is he's very good at creating chemistry, and I don't think just because Shannon was great in that rapport. Hold on. I don't think that just because Shannon was great in that rapport means he'll be great. Just plug him in with anyone else, because Stephen A, I don't think has whatever ratings are, whatever, blah 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 blah. However ESPN values him, however much of a superstar he is, I think his chemistry sucks. Post Skip
And it
leaving
doesn't
First
matter.
Take. Go on.
His chemistry sucks, and it doesn't matter. And also like Skip is great with creating chemistry. What? Like, when? Like, look, there's a reason why Skip rarely goes with a guest host. There's a reason why Skip wants total control.
Is it because you're
It's the
saying
same
nobody
reason why
wants to?
Stephen A wants total control. He
Which is
wants
what?
to shape the thing. He wants to only talk to the people he wants to talk to. I don't think you could put either one of those guys with anybody and it would be magic. I think that Skip is a brand, Stephen A is a brand, Shannon Sharpe's a brand, and like you put them next to each other and it'll be okay, I guess. I'm not. They're not. No one's really worried about chemistry, and I also, when I think about Shannon, I don't think he is so much worried about. And this, I'm just guessing here. Obviously, I don't know what's going on in his head, but I don't think Shannon is worried about going into his next iteration full time. My guess is he already knows what that is, and it's probably Club Shay Shay.
Right. It's not going to be one of these Embrace Debate. He's not going to do that full time.
He'll probably do a daily version of it, is what I'm guessing. I could see ESPN doing like, okay, you want ESPN 2 and do Club Shay Shay 5 days a week? Or you want to do ESPN Plus and do Club Shay Shay 5 days a week? And then we'll bring over your podcast feed. We'll license it for the length of your contract. So
yeah, but Club Shay Shay
audience.
Embrace Debate. Club Shay Shay is just him. It's his version of Bob Costas.
That's what I mean. Like there's no reason for him to necessarily continue down that road. Like so what? Especially if he goes to ESPN and it's like, all right, we'll sign you to an overall deal, or we'll split you. We'll cut a deal with you. You're dealing with FanDuel. Okay, we'll license you from FanDuel, like they're doing with the Omaha production show, Peyton Manning's company. Mm-hmm. We'll license your FanDuel shows, and we want you to appear with Stephen A once a week. It'll be an event once a week. Shannon versus Stephen A. And we'll make sure that your show grows. And you get to reap the profits of owning your show. And we get to have you away from our number one competitor. And everybody's happy.
Well, I mean, you say that as if, you don't value these shows in the first place, the Embrace Debate format.
Yeah.
Or the pairs of people as much as I do.
Yeah.
The fact that two people have chemistry or don't, you see as interchangeable pieces.
No.
Hold on a second. I
think you're reading me wrong.
Okay, but I'll stop for you to counter that in a second. Yeah. But you're saying it doesn't matter if they have chemistry or not. I think it does matter because I haven't watched First Take hardly in almost 7 years since Skip left First Take, because I thought he and Stephen A had chemistry that Stephen A does not have with anybody else. And I think it's assumed that because Shannon is entertaining, again, you look at this in musical terms or in athletic terms, team building, just because somebody is good in one context, he might be dull as shit with another side by side with somebody. Same goes for Skip as well. So that's what I mean by he has a something intangible that he does draw out a certain kind of back and forth, a certain kind of dynamic with he has a track record having done that twice now. And I think that needs to be recognized as these people go into whatever next permutation. I think he's horrible on his own. His podcast is unlistenable, I find. His solo podcast. But so, I mean, we'll see what happens from here, but I think that does matter. I think if Shannon ends up with Stephen A and Michael Irvin, and it's canned and just hokey and stupid and lacks the sparks, I think that will eventually, I would hope, impact their bottom line.
It won't.
It won't. Okay.
And I don't think ESPN cares about that. Listen to what your logic there, right? They were willing to let these people who had great chemistry, even they said you believe they did. Skip and Shannon, not Skip and Stephen A split up.
Mm-hmm.
They experimented. They made a choice to go with Stephen A over Max.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they care. About like having the perfect chemistry. They just throw people together randomly all the time. We're talking about ESPN here.
Yeah, but
we're talking about Keyshawn, Jay Will, and Zubin or whatever. We're talking about we're talking about remember the original Get Up crew? It was we're gonna just throw every big contract people all together. We're gonna put Jalen Rose.
McAfee was on that.
What?
McAfee was on that.
Not initially, no.
He ended up there before
he visited,
striking on his own.
Yeah, so Get Up. He ended up. You had Greenberg. You threw in Jalen Rose. You threw in Michelle Beadle. And you just throw them in together. Like ESPN doesn't. This is not a top concern for ESPN. Finding putting people with crackling chemistry together.
But it is for the sliver of people who care enough to leave YouTube comments.
You're assuming.
No. For the sliver of people that you described who leave YouTube comments, this is important.
But the thing is, that's not what they're buying.
That's not who's buying. That's
ESPN.
I get that. But we're speaking from two different universes here.
No, but we are speaking from two different universes. But let's look at what, in realistic terms, what they are, what they're looking for. They just overpaid for Pat McAfee, a hot digital property, something that they could slap on all their radio stations while they have them in their network, and get a bunch of YouTube views and get a bunch of views on ESPN platforms. All right. Plus, they'll have McAfee continue on game day and do a bunch of other stuff for them. My guess is they look at Shannon Sharpe potentially at the same thing. They look at Shannon Sharpe going on someplace like First Take similarly. Remember, we're not talking about a daily thing. It's not a 2-part harmony like he had with Skip. It's hey, it's football season. We're bringing a football Hall of Famer. and we'll let them in basketball season 2. You know what I mean? Like it's one of a it's Stephen A and a poo-poo platter.
Basically, yeah.
And like you have Shannon do his show, do his thing. You collect your money from gambling, and we're good. So yes, would the if the chemistry is not there, I mean, would YouTube commenters and online commenting people complain? Sure, but that is a side dish. That's like complaining about the appetizer, not the meal.
See, I disagree with this because
If
there
you're not
has
going to
to
make
be a point.
money,
Well, hold on a
if
second.
you're not
There
going to
has
make
to be a
money
point.
off that,
There has to be a point where viewer lack of engagement matters.
but the thing is that it wouldn't matter there, like because you're talking about one day a week.
Okay, so
and it doesn't even have to be a full show.
okay,
Like,
so in reverse. Okay, so but in reverse, or on the other hand, if FS1 can't create that same chemistry that they had with Shannon and Skip, then that they could suffer.
That's different because you have a 2-part harmony. And that's what all the reports of that Skip's trying to do. He's trying to find someone he has chemistry with to do a show 5 days a week with for 2.5 hours a day. That's a whole other ballgame versus someone you bring in for a few segments a week.
Right. Okay. So if they were trying to create a 2-part harmony at ESPN with Shannon and someone else, which we're saying you're not expecting them to do,
no,
it would matter.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my point.
Yeah. But they're not. But I don't expect that at all. Stephen A has made it clear that that's not what he wants. I don't think that's what Shannon wants either.
No, it shouldn't be what he wants.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear based on recent reports that's not what he's looking for.
But if that were to be the format that he was being courted for by someone, it would matter. And I think that his chemistry with Stephen A would be not.
I have no idea. I haven't seen them together.
I think it was canned and hokey and stupid.
Yeah,
and
I have no idea. I'd hate the show and wouldn't listen anyway.
Right. And you don't even care about these types of duos, these barbershop duos. It should be called barbershop duos.
Well, that's where you were wrong. I do care about a lot about chemistry and about whether a show works or not doesn't work. What I don't care about is
this format. Is this embrace debate?
Well, because this is where I agree with Dan Lebatard. This is dumbing down discourse at alarming rates. I mean, I think this is like some of my favorite NBA podcasters talk about rings, culture, rings with a Z or a bunch of Z's at the end, that's taken over the NBA. Because you have guys like Kevin Durant and James Harden and all these dudes who are obsessed with what these dudes say, even though what they say doesn't matter. It's powerful, but it's dumb.
Yes,
but it's important. That's the other thing. It's important because a thing like Get Up, a thing like Undisputed, a thing like First Things First, a thing like First Take prints money for now.
Right. Well, I mean, this is, and I think playing Dan Lebatard, us playing Dan Lebatard, playing Stephen A's response to him.
You think that's
next? I think it was a perfect segue. I mean,
okay. Let me go there for a second. I so dislike what this show's become.
I was never a fan ever.
I do not listen to the Stephen A. Smith No Mercy podcast. I am an admirer of Stephen A. Smith's story. It doesn't have a whole lot of precedent in my lifetime in journalism. A guy gets let go by ESPN and somehow makes it back stronger than ever, dominates the network, will now be someone who gets to have resources with First Take to make it bigger and bigger and bigger as Skip Bayless looks for a partner, as Skip Bayless takes 2 months off and they try to figure out if Richard Sherman can fill the role of Shannon Sharpe, and as it is rumored all over the place that Shannon Sharpe might go to ESPN and be a part of what Stephen A. Smith is now doing under ESPN's umbrella. And if you're watching him closely, a lot of stuff outside of ESPN's umbrella, because that man is hungrier than anyone I've ever met in this business about accruing, and whatever's next for him is going to be giant. I consider him a friend and I'm impressed by him. I don't like what he's done to sports television. I think he's helped make it dumber. This has bothered him that I said this to him the last time that we talked. And I would like to talk to him in the future in a way that is conversational instead of performative about how dumb sports debate television has made everything.
Okay, I want to pause it right there.
Keep the words right out of your mouth.
Right, and also I think, and Stephen A's upcoming criticism of Lebatard in this clip, I think, is accurate.
I agree,
because Lebatard has done his version of this, and in that version of this, participated in the dumbing down of the conversation. He is capable of doing things that are interesting, sometimes very funny, and going places that other people won't go. But I do think the upcoming criticism is very, very apt.
Oh, I'm totally with. Well, yes, I agree.
But I heard this. People sent me that Stephen A. Smith went after me loudly, because that's the only way he goes after people. And this is what he had to say. I've only seen it. I haven't actually heard it. I've only seen aggregated quotes that I read, that he said something. I didn't even know what he was reacting to, that something I did was bull. So let's hear that.
Oh, my Lord. I'm looking Elamin Hassan, rather. I'm sorry to mess up your name, Elamin. You know that. Got love and respect for you. He on the Dan Lebatard show, and he's talking too. And I'm looking at Dan Lebatard, and I'm still disgusted. Even though Dan Lebatard is my friend, and I love him. But I'm still disgusted about how he came at me with that question on his damn show. I hate what you and Skip Bayless have done to sports. Like his ass has been doing accounting. Did you have highly questionable? Was our daddy on the show with us? That was you. By the way, I love Mr. Lebatard, Papa De Lebatard. No shade on him either. I'm talking about your comfort. You was on the show just looking.
Zabby?
Yeah, I mean, I in a rare moment, I'm with Stephen A. Yes, I like what Dan Lebatard said, and I also think, I mean, Jesus Christ, if anybody is like handing out demerits for dumbing down sports media, what the fuck is he talking about? His show is like watching a bunch of like junior high school kids like joking around half the time. I mean, that's not what he was talking in a different. He was specifically saying that the debate format has degraded the depth and intelligence of our sports discourse. So I agree with him. So I think they both have
on high.
Yes, I think they both have points here, and I'm a fan of neither of these guys.
Yeah, I'm more of a fan of Lebatard than I am on the other side, because I think what his flavor was pretty unique. I don't really love what they're doing over at Meadowlark, which is the company that Lebatard has left ESPN for. Basically, he's made a progressive sports media company, pretty much. And it's not that, like there's nothing wrong with a progressive perspective in sports media. I have no problem with that.
But that's not what we're getting.
Only that is.
Except,
yeah, I mean, if you listen to the content, you say you don't partake.
no.
If you listen to the content and I'll play another clip that sort of helps articulate it a little bit further. Like, it's pretty clear that that's the aim, that he was, even though he denies it, which I find kind of comical,
and disingenuous and weak and lame, because it's not a progressive. It's a caricature. It's pandering to what is safe to dangle out there as quote unquote progressive, when it's just towing the line. I mean, I have a lot of admiration for what he said in this clip, and I was like, wow, I actually admire this guy. Can actually be straight and insightful and courageous and shoot from the hip, but he doesn't do that most of the time. He's, Fidel Castro is our Hitler. I know that's not, he didn't say that on his current network, but things like that. Just throwing the meat to bloody meat to the wolves that want to hear certain like buzzwords. It's the opposite of dog whistling. Like, conservatives are accused of dog whistling, and people who posture as progressives are like, they like megaphone. They like scream into a megaphone on purpose.
Well, look, he uses a lot of dog whistle words. I mean, in different ways. I mean, like I was listening to him the other day before we get back to this. He was talking about running backs like everybody are right now, which I think is a dumb conversation. Honestly,
why am I not surprised?
I think it's idiotic. Look, if you're gonna have something like 24 positions on or 25 positions on a football team, there's gonna be a position that becomes worth less.
You need to go work for a GM's office or something, because it's like, oh, fuck it, get him out of here. It doesn't matter. Just bring somebody else in.
It's the truth, though, is it? Someone's got to be last, and I'm not saying running backs aren't even last in the state.
No, they're not. They're spoken of as if, because they take such punishment. So do offensive linemen.
The mighty has fallen. Like Barry Sanders back in the day. Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Thurman Thomas. The days of running backs being the dominant force in football are over.
Or at least it's changed for now.
I don't think so. I think it's done.
I mean, I can't speak to where things are going. I'm just saying,
but
you're in a position where you don't want to overpay these guys that are going to take so much physical punishment. So you're always in this dance where you pay them on their first deal and then try to get as much out of them as you can, and then replace them with somebody else who's on their first deal.
Like they do with every other position.
Yes, I understand that. And actually, you're right. The people who complain about this speak as if running backs are the most hard done by, but it's really like offensive linemen and people like that. Wouldn't you say? There are other positions that are considered more disposable and don't get paid as much and take as much physical toll?
Yeah, I mean, look, running backs are running to the ground, no doubt, and I wouldn't necessarily say that they. I guess offensive linemen probably would take more physical toll, probably, but I think that's an argument. That's a very that's a tough one that I don't feel like I could give a full answer for. I think that look, strategy in sports changes, much like in basketball. Having a giant center who stayed in the post and didn't shoot more than 5 feet away, like Shaq did back in the day, was huge. Today, that guy would be marginalized.
Mm-hmm. Right. Things shift.
Be encouraged to go shoot threes. In hockey, it used to be you'd ride one goalie. Most teams don't do that anymore. They have two that they ride, and they're splitting it every they're splitting their time. And used to have goons that you would have that would beat people up. Your defenseman, you'd want Now you have big guys who can skate in shoot and score. Like instead of just beating people up, sportsy ball.
Right.
You know,
right.
like the goon of the day can't stay in the league. Roy Hibbert. If Roy Hibbert were 10 years older, he was the starting center for the Indiana Pacers, and he was early on in his career, he was an NBA All-Star. We're talking 2012. All right. So
You're
not
saying he
long
would have been a
ago.
Hall of Famer if he'd had a 10-year career.
If he got into the league in 1992, probably. At least he pushed for one. But no, the league changed. Strategies change.
So let me guess. Do you have the clip of Dan Patrick talking about running backs? Because
not Dan Patrick, but you mean Dan Lebatard?
Dan Lebatard, yeah.
I mean, I could bring it up. I mean, yeah.
I mean, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it, though.
Okay.
Why you think it was what?
Because he used the magic word, and just like a word that sort of gave away, like, oh, like this is like you're just divorced from reality here. And I think you'll be able to get that word pretty quickly. Give me one moment as I bring this thing up. He brought in Ricky Williams for this interview too, which I have to give his people credit for. That's an inspired choice.
Well, I think it's a catch, yes, too.
And like before we even get to Ricky Williams, I think like he gives away the game. So
okay, I'm very curious now. I'm gonna try to watch this through the eyes of like what I think you're gonna.
I'll shut up as it plays.
I don't actually know how familiar Ricky is with the subject matter I'm about to put in front of him, because I imagine him, out in the hills, growing cannabis, living his most peaceful life, and not exactly checking his phone for NFL news. But I think you'd find it interesting, Ricky, that the average NFL running back is now in a position where he will be paid less than kickers. They've made the position that you made, great, and that made you great. They've made that position something so disposable, so interchangeable, that they will burn through the bodies of running backs very quickly. And now the running backs should unionize inside of their own union because they're so devalued. Have you been following any of what's been happening with passing game football that has, at least in part, rendered the running back, if not obsolete, pretty close to it, and certainly not valuable?
Well, I mean, I haven't been following the statistics, but in following the NFL, I've seen that running backs aren't getting too much love. Not like when I played.
And what do you think is happening there? Like, do you have any sort of theories? Do you even care that that's something that's happening? That's something that you dedicated your life to? Because I don't think, Ricky, people understand how hard it was to be great at what it is you were great at. So that's being thrown in the garbage can, this thing that you cared about for 10 years in an unreasonable way.
Yeah, I don't care, but I think it's fascinating. I think it's really interesting. And I think, I'm halfway serious about this, but I think I'm part of the reason. And because you can't depend on them. And I think for a couple of reasons. One is because it's a difficult position where you get beat up, so you can't depend that they're going to stay healthy, and you can't depend that they're going to keep on doing it over and over again because they get worn out. And two, it's like there's a certain kind of person that chooses to play the running back position. And I think you can say that for all the positions. And I think maybe that kind of person in this day and age is not really built for football. And I think with the Saquon situation, he's a running back, but he's more than that. He's a star. He's a superstar. And I think now for a running back, if you're going to be a running back, you have to be a superstar if you want to get paid anything.
I'm going to play.
Well, what an interesting. It's like he didn't play into where Dan was trying to steer him to go.
Mm-hmm. My favorite part of it is did you see his website?
No.
It's lower third. Let me go back.
Okay, yeah, I didn't notice that. I was looking him up.
Ricky
So, like-
Williams .life.
Yeah, okay.
I love it.
And
All right.
and wow, he just said he didn't care. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And he didn't take up the torch, right? He didn't take
Yeah.
up the like okay, I'm gonna get riled up. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like Lebatard threw a flare up and Ricky Williams ignored it.
Yep.
He didn't take the bait.
Didn't take the bait. What Lebatard goes on to do here and what he's done in other clips is basically demand equity for running backs.
Well, okay, but one thing I'm curious, and maybe this surfaces in the rest of the clip, I don't know. What did he mean when he said the type of person or personality that becomes a running back maybe isn't built for football? I wonder what he meant by that.
Well, I know what I guess, and I don't believe it did surface because Lebatard had no interest in actually hearing what he said.
But what do you think it was?
Well, I think Ricky was referring to his career, and the fact that Ricky quit football to go live in an ashram and smoke pot.
But what does that mean? The kind of person that would become a running back isn't built for football.
Meaning it's also like you said, it's a very violent position. Basically, and you're grabbing the ball and you're taking it deep into the teeth of the defense, and you're getting schmacked. They're eccentric.
Okay.
You know, among football players.
I gotta close my windows. So somehow talk to keep people entertained. I gotta go close my windows because it's raining.
Yeah, I want to bring up Ricky Williams .life. What's Ricky Williams .life? Like, I'm gonna bring this up and share my screen with y'all. We're gonna look at Ricky Williams .life. Get in touch with your astrological side. I love it. Okay, let's see. I don't love the design of his site, but okay. Check out Lila. What's that? Page not found. Yeah, that's not good. Book a session. He uses the same podcast booking link that I do. Astrology readings by Ricky Williams. Oh my God. We can have an astrology meeting with Ricky Williams. New to astrology, 30-minute intro first session with Ricky.
Get in touch with your astrological side. I love it.
Yeah. So for $172, we can have 30 minutes with Ricky to talk astrology. I should book that for my show.
You really should. I don't know that he would want you broadcasting it on your show, though.
I don't know that he'd care.
He might not. He might be, proprietary over that, and
or maybe I should just try to book him.
Do the thing first and try to book him.
Yeah.
Or see if he'll come on, and then if he says yes, you can do that. You can do that, so you can ask him about it, so you know what it's like from experience.
Oh yeah, and we're not seeing a live version. Let me share more here. Okay, share. Yeah, so look at it. Okay, we could do a cancer exploration for 60 minutes with Ricky Williams. You do a 60-minute intro to astrology first session with Ricky. Let me see. I'm guessing $200. $307. Weird
price. There's a lot of service. It's like that's worse than Ticketmaster, right? It's like
yeah.
So was there
Also-
more?
Yeah. What?
Well, no. Oh, I was gonna say. While we're still on this, I mean, I think, like I said, if you confirm him to be on the show and then do this to know what it's like, and then talk to him about it, what an interesting, strange. But I mean, I shouldn't be that surprised. I mean, people have all sorts of interests, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about a guy who quit football to go live in an ashram.
But I mean, that generalization about running backs, how accurate is that?
Yeah, I don't. I think it would take some clarity. I don't believe Lebatard went back to that thought. As I said, we could bring it back up and go back in there.
I'd like to. I mean, it's like.
Let me go back there.
I think Lebatard quickly caught on to the fact that Ricky Williams wasn't playing into where
game.
he wanted to go. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back there and I go back here.
Running back, if you're going to be a running back, you have to be a superstar if you want to get paid anything.
I'm going to play for you in the audience some Saquon sound, but explain to me what you believe the personality type is that chooses to be a running back.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things is you gotta be a glutton for punishment to a certain extent, you know, because it doesn't matter. Any running back, you go through a game, you're gonna be hurt. You're gonna be hurt. So you got to be a glutton for punishment. And typically, if you're a glutton for punishment, that adds up over time, and it doesn't work out. And I'm sure that I could say there are other personality traits about someone who is a glutton for punishment, but the idea is you're not going to last very long.
But explain that to me. Explain to me why a human being would be a glutton for punishment.
Oh, Dan, come on, man, come
They
on.
appreciate the value of it. You know, a lot of people avoid pain and avoid difficulty, and they have to keep their lives really small. But someone who's willing to do something difficult and take the punishment and turn it into a positive feeling and keep going, right, they can overcome a lot of obstacles. But if they only apply that to football, right, the longevity is just not there. And so I think, you know, running backs should, someone said it, I saw the clip, that running backs should, when they come out early, demand more money. And I think they should tell themselves, I'm going to do this for 4 years and I'm going to take whatever I made and do something different. Because, you know, then everybody wins.
I said,
Can they get away with that though, James?
shouted me out the room.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
I mean, thank you for appearing here to talk about your brilliance. It's strange to see you here on a Friday, come in just to point out your brilliance.
I do oddball now.
Ricky, the glutton for punishment part of this. How did you become a glutton for punishment?
Want me to pause it?
Oh my god! Yeah, please do, because I know what he's fishing for. Oh my god, he's just pandering, man. This is why I can't watch that dude. Like. He's trying to steer it to some sob story that Ricky became a glutton for punishment because in some way he was. I mean, this is what I'm betting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're smiling about it, you know. So it's like trying to make it seem like Ricky ended up there because of being devalued early in life by circumstances.
That was certainly the feeling that I think he was fishing for.
Yeah, of course. And you know, like Rick, he should start a camp for young aspiring running backs and tutor them and guide them instead of this astrology stuff, or maybe in addition. And I'm not knocking astrology in the slightest. Actually, I'm very curious as to what he does with that. I might sign up too, but maybe I'll do it as a correspondent for all the above. Could they do that though? Could running backs get away with doing that early on? I don't think from what I understand, the structure of like the draft and the way salaries work, I don't think they could have the leverage to demand more up front.
Well, there's a rookie wage scale. So depending on where you're drafted, the total value of your contract is set before you're drafted. And it's a percentage of the salary cap. And when we're talking about the NFL. Now, what you could do, because a lot of the terms of the contract could be negotiated, hence why you get some rookies that are only signing their contracts now, even though the total value stays the same. There are guys who fight for every bonus or to tweak it here or there.
Mm-hmm.
In order to do what they're talking about would take something that's not going to happen. Everybody knows this is not going to happen. It would take basically the rest of the football players to say, oh my God, poor running backs. We're going to take care of the running backs and tip the money
Scales in their favor. Mm-hmm.
During collective bargaining sessions. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think
everybody
so.
knows it's not going to happen. Because the safeties, the cornerbacks are also pretty disposable too when it comes in football. Basically, your top guys stick around for a while, but usually the best guys don't last much past 30. Like most are they're not as they maybe get to a second contract. But they don't stick around for very long. Most wide receivers also don't get past 30. It's more acute with running backs. Because there's more of them on a team. Usually most teams carry 4 versus 1 kicker. That's another reason why I hate that kicker stat. It's bull. Basically, like every team has 1 kicker. Just about every team has at least 4 running backs.
So that obviously naturally depreciates the value.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most teams bring on at least 1 rookie running back a year. Not everybody, but usually it's a high 20s that bring in at least 1 rookie a year. Most teams don't bring in 1 rookie kicker. Like it is so like it is a strange stew there that we're talking about.
Right, and of course Dan is flattening the context.
Yeah,
to
of course.
to support a narrative, and this gets into the broader issue of sports media being mostly hijacked by the same narratives that have infiltrated pretty much everywhere else, other than overtly conservative media.
Yeah, your Clay Travises of the world who have their own set of ridiculousness, like
sure. And they're pandering too, and our guy
without
Whitlock,
a doubt,
who's
Whitlock's another version of that,
right,
and in their strange relationship that blew up so early,
right. And I mean, you brought up Jamel Hill before we went live, and I'm very curious to get your perspective there. I know Dan is a supporter of hers, and I know this loops back around to that initial clip of him talking about Stephen A, because he said that your problem isn't with me, it's with what Jamel said.
Well, let's start with I believe I have it queued up here, and I'll give a little bit of context here as I switch screens. So Jamel Hill has been the go-to correspondent for Dan Lebatard when it comes to when it comes to race and Black people in sports. And there was a big kerfuffle with Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel Nichols was formerly the host of The Jump on ESPN and was promised, as Mike Greenberg moved into his morning show, she was promised to be the host of the NBA Finals, which would be the crowning achievement of what she was doing. She was deep into basketball. She was hosting a basketball show daily. So that's what she wanted. She wanted
how many years at this point would you say she had invested or maybe was even visible at ESPN as one of their top basketball voices?
Oh, at that point, we're talking 6 or 7 years. She was at and probably if you include her first stint, probably 10.
She was kind of the face of their basketball coverage in a way, wasn't she?
Yeah, because she hosted their daily studio show.
Right. And was the one and would do the monologues, and then everybody else was sort of satellites around her, like guests. Like Amin was one of her guests, frequent guests, wasn't he?
Absolutely. Amin Al Hassan. Yeah, absolutely. So Rachel was promised that she would get this plum gig. This would be the gig of a lifetime. She'd host the NBA Finals. She's never going to be a play-by-play person. She's worked the sidelines before. She wanted to be the host. And just a little bit more background on her. She was a newspaper reporter who turned herself into a TV reporter at ESPN early on. She covered the NBA and NFL, then eventually left ESPN to go to Turner, and then came back to ESPN with the jump. So this was like over the course of her entire career. We're talking 20 years, 25 years. So crowning achievement, she wants to host the NBA Finals. So there is a piece of equipment that was commonly used during the pandemic and is used on the road all the time that we'll hear about in this clip as this goes on. Won't listen to all of it, but I think there's a chunk that will get it across. That
an honest conversation about ESPN. Get the fuck, take honest out of there.
That got Rachel Nichols in trouble. Because
basically got her fired.
Yeah. So basically, this camera was turned on, and it recorded a secret conversation that she had, where she it revealed that there had been this whole fight over who was going to host Countdown between her and a black host, Maria Taylor. And she was up and coming, and she really skyrocketed to prominence with the whole George Floyd thing and the effect on ESPN. And ESPN basically went from not allowing politics to be talked about to like, hey, anybody can talk about politics, especially if you're black.
Well, anybody can present a certain political slant.
Oh, for sure.
That is really dumbed down and convenient and just sort of prefab and
for sure. So I think we'll pick it up from there.
And then Kendrick Perkins and Richard Jefferson went 2 minutes on the subject of race, where she has to sit out the conversation that was caused by what she was calling in the report spy video from a hotel.
They have a massive problem on their hands, but it's not a massive problem that started with Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor. It's what Amin was talking about, is that when you are constantly reacting to public criticism or to the moment, as opposed to having structural things in place where you address these things, that's why you wind up looking sloppy and crazy before the rest of the world. And, thinking about, my situation is like they were reacting to a moment then. That moment said that people didn't want to hear any political talk, any racial talk, any social justice talk. Not that that was something Mike and I were doing every day on SportsCenter. We weren't. They let a false narrative persist about our show that people just kind of ran away with. They let the idiots in the room control the conversation. People like Clay Travis. That's what happened. And because they allowed those people to direct their course of action, they panicked. And suddenly they were very intentional about the things that they were doing in our show. They wanted black faces. They didn't want necessarily black voices. And
key term: black faces, not black voices. Well, what do you take that phrase to mean? They wanted black faces, not black voices.
Well, that she feels the network at the time that her and Michael Smith were hosting SportsCenter, and that failed, that ESPN was actively suppressing when she says black voices, it means black voices of a very specific stripe or slant, right?
I think so.
Because of Jamel Hill, who and this is interesting because I'm a much bigger fan of who she was, of the previous phase of her media career.
Mhm.
I'm also a big fan of Michael Smith, and I enjoyed their show because they were a duo and they have rapport, and they were supposedly genuinely friends in an industry that James Brown says nobody's really friends in, or whatever. That might be misquoting you, but
yeah.
So I feel like if the kind of network existed that she is envisioning, that wants black faces and also black voices, then other black voices at that network would complain that they weren't being heard. And you know what? That network does exist. It's called ESPN. Right? So
Yeah.
I think things have changed maybe since she was there, because she did get heat for her Trump tweet and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since, I don't know exactly what the time frame is.
So this is
timeline.
So
But
this is
ESPN has become the place that she would have wanted.
Well, if you hear her recently, she doesn't think so.
Of course not.
In fact, she stays by this narrative. Now, I'll ask you a follow-up. What do you think black people on air at ESPN think about what she just said?
Black people on air?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would imagine it runs the gamut. I mean, I would imagine the ones that want to toe the party line and just say the things that are, sort of expected are maybe feeling the same way she does. But then the ones that would offer something else feel, yeah, well, they don't want to hear my voice. Is that what you were getting at?
How about I make it even more pointed?
What do you think Stephen A feels?
Well, he's certainly in this club. What do you think about the non-progressive black people at ESPN think about what she said?
They would say the exact same thing, but from a different angle. Yeah, you're right. They want black faces, but not voices. They don't want my conservative black voice, except how many of those people are doing the dance that's expected of them?
Well, there were two people who clearly have, at this point and to this day, have been openly both black and conservative-ish at ESPN. Two people that I think that I would think would take this as a slap. That my black voice is not authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Because just as a black person, just hearing this, like, well, all black voices have to be one thing?
Yes, she has a very.
I mean, that's not just in this case, but like in many, many cases with Jamel, that's the vibe that she gives off, that I am the authentic black voice. And if your voice isn't like mine, then even if you're liberal and you're not as outspoken as me.
Mm-hmm.
So let alone someone like, say, Stage Steele,
mm-hmm.
who was her foil at ESPN and was her foil afterward. She's done several episodes of Lebatard's show and smacked around, verbally.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's sort of the Combs of the Hannity and Combs. She's sort of the Combs to Dan Lebatard's Hannity. It's flipped.
Yeah, right. And Alan Combs, the late Alan Combs, was Hannity and Combs was the highly rated show on Fox News that followed Bill O'Reilly back in the day. It was your red meat Reagan conservative dude and your milquetoast liberal dude, and
You're
Kennedy
joking, liberal.
would beat the crap out of him.
Sure, sure.
Night after night after night. He made a nice living that way, and eventually left the show. But that's absolutely
seemed like a fun gig. I would have taken it. Actually, you know what? Let me, because I haven't seen it enough. But he didn't seem.
Yeah.
It seemed
They
like
were
you
friendly.
could do that. It seemed like you could do that and like laugh about it. I wouldn't work for Fox News, but
well, they were friendly.
I could see a gig like that being fun to to a point if you're not selling your soul to do it. But
okay, and the other figure, we've brought him up several times, Stephen A. Smith. Now, his exact political views, I'd call him an old school Democrat. I
we
wouldn't
don't
call
know
him
what his views are actually.
But he has been he is friends with very very prominent conservatives. He appears on Fox News a lot. And you listen to his he sounds like a 90s Democrat when you listen to No Mercy, his or now Stephen A. Smith show. When he talks about politics, he sounds like Bill Clinton in 1998. Like that's who he sounds like, which today would be a Republican.
Yes. And excoriated by people like Jamel.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is interesting because the name escapes me now. New York Post New York Post correspondent who analyzes their media. Oh man, he's on House of Strauss.
Ryan Glass-Steagall.
Yes, thank you.
Who I'm so chasing to get on the show.
Oh, awesome. That'll be fantastic. He made it sound like Stephen A. You don't really know where he stands on politics, and he's kind of a wild card. I feel he is not thought out enough to really have a coherent politics, at least that we know of. And I also think he's going to pander. He's going to pander to some degree to what Jamel would want the network to be, while at the same time pushing respectability politics a little bit and pushing, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think respectability politics became a dirty word. And pushing this very pro entrepreneurship, kind of like a Boyce Watkins kind of view of like empowerment through capitalism, right? So I basically think that's his whole shtick. And then he's going to talk about, he's always going to pay lip service to this, like being a mouthpiece for the struggles of Black people. But as you said to me back in like 2016, at the time, I don't know how you feel now, but you didn't think then that he really had any sort of political agenda to present or to offer.
Yeah, I think it's unclear. Like, it's not core to who he is. Even though he mentioned on Bill Simmons' show that he intended to have on presidential candidates on his show.
He didn't say which party, right? Like on purpose. Like,
Did not say. There's a lot more in one than the other. That's so. That's I would imagine. I would imagine. That's what he's talking about.
Right. I mean, so he's clearly playing the field.
Yeah.
I think he would be in over his head talking about politics, frankly.
I agree.
I think he's just too focused in one direction, and I think, or in one area of life. And I think he would show very early on how misinformed he is. He would need somebody else who really is up on that stuff to support him. But I don't think he'll do it. I think he'll sort of bumble his way into that and bluster his way into it. And he'll be interesting. I mean, he was on Bill Maher's show. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they had an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
you know, it would have to be settings like that where he's just sort of rapping back and forth with people, not necessarily tuned into the politics.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, can you get away with that today?
I don't know.
I don't know that you can. My gut says you can't.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll be especially adept or even useful in any way. But okay. So I'm very curious as to what Dan says here, because I bet does Dan basically sort of let himself be a cuck on here? Let's
let this play out. Give me a moment.
That's how it came off, right? And so because of that, ultimately we wound up paying the price. Yep. I mean, sure, there were things that Mike and I could have done differently on SportsCenter with just getting our show together, but we never got that time because they were too busy responding to conservative media. And so whenever you keep doing that, that's how you wind up with sloppy situations. And it shouldn't have taken a George Floyd for ESPN to allow commentators and people like Dan and me and you and me to discuss racism in this country. That doesn't mean that we would discuss it every day or every hour, but just within the context that seems appropriate, which is all any of us asked to do. Nobody came to work every day at ESPN and said, you know what I want to talk about today? Immigration reform. Nobody did that shit. So it's like,
I have a question.
Disingenuous.
Okay, and I have a question. When did Kurt Schilling get in hot water? Not that I agreed with.
Oh, that's a good one.
But relative to
his politics.
Yeah, wasn't it around the same time they were getting?
I believe so.
Reined into.
I think so. That's part of why I've always sort of thought her argument was disingenuous, and that so we're talking. It was during the first Trump campaign.
Mm-hmm.
He said it. He's had statements for a long time.
Oh,
He said
yeah.
really, really awful things. And then he talked about transgendered people on Facebook. And that got him in hot water. And then a year later, after Trump was elected, he went and talked about how he supported Trump on social media, and I don't believe his contract was renewed after that.
Right, but I mean,
But ESPN had made this concerted effort, I think, and I don't know that it's a pure both sides ism, but I think in many ways they decided that they were going to reel in
both
politics at that point.
Right, and then it flipped. But she's only telling half the story.
Yeah, I mean, she's telling her perspective.
And I don't know that she's being disingenuous so much as she believes she's being unfair.
I'm talking about the immigration reform kind of argument. That's not, I mean, of course. I mean, like no one expected her to no one who was complaining about these issues were thinking that she's going on TV to talk about immigration reform. It was mostly the same thing that in Lebatard sees it the same way. It was mostly racially tinged conversations that were like deep in race and race and politics.
Except that you know what's terrible is.
Oh, and by the way, yes, it was the same year.
That's what I thought. I thought those things happened almost.
Yeah.
Like almost side by side.
Yeah, within weeks of each other.
Okay, that's okay. You know, what's unfortunate is I've said this to you before, people like Jamel, who I thought was really insightful prior to this becoming this kind of I don't know what you'd call
living the gimmick. Thank you.
But I don't know what you'd call this voice. I don't know, like a stumper, is that a term, or an advocate? Someone who kind of
she's I mean, I think similar to Clay Travis.
A champion of a certain worldview and a champion of a certain.
Oh, very much. She's an activist.
She wasn't quite that before.
Yeah.
And I thought she had more depth, ironically, back then. And I see this with someone like a Bomani Jones as well. It's like, man, you can just tell these people
That they're
have
living the
interesting things
gimmick.
to say. Right. You can tell that if the microphones were off and the Rachel Nichols thing, the thing that caught Rachel Nichols wasn't turned on, and you could get these people to be honest, you would have interesting, dynamic, truthful conversations with them. But they became this kind of this parody of a certain um, kind of shrill alarm system going off all the time, do very predictably, and now they're living that.
Yeah.
Like I can see listening to her talk, she believes. It seems to me like she believes it. It's no longer a role, and I feel a sadness for what we lost, because I feel if you drop Bomani Jones into a neutral world,
Yeah.
not the world we live in,
Yeah.
and say, okay, dude, just
wildly
give us what
talented
you
guy.
think. Just give us what you think. Just go off, do investigative pieces, do essays, do editorials. I think we get very dynamic, interesting stuff, but he is totally playing into this. He's like dancing for approval, basically, and it's unfortunate.
Well, he went into a world that, and we'll get there. If you're still willing to keep going here, that that Dan Lebatard, claims that Skip and Stephen A created, where living the gimmick gets you rewards. If you don't live the gimmick, and I don't think he's right, because I think it's larger than that. I mean, I think we saw that with Don Lemon.
Dan Lebatard's living the fucking gimmick.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think we see this all across media, where it's not about, like, it's not so much just them. It's sort of, we can't detach ourselves from our work. And if your work is presenting yourselves in public, like it is Jamel's Hills, like it is Amin El Hassan, like it is Maria Taylor or Rachel Nichols or Dan Lebatard, Stephen A. You gotta live the gimmick.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, Jason Whitlock and Steve Kim both pointed out that Jamel Hill, according to their assessment, they feel she destroyed Michael Smith's career. Michael Smith, who I'm a big fan of, as you know. And I don't know how you would call that. I don't know.
I don't know that he.
Like I'm talking about with everything she's referring to here about the collapse of their stint on SportsCenter and then her tweeting. So I don't know exactly where they connect the dots there, but I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I think I have that clip if you want me to go there.
Steve Kim and Whitlock talking about it?
Yeah.
Please do. I'm gonna go pick up my lunch from the front porch. It just got delivered, but I'm not gonna eat it while we're talking.
Okay.
Because I'm very familiar with the clip. I'll let it start and then I'll run downstairs.
Okay. Well, I'll just let it rot.
Yeah, I'm so excited you have that because I didn't realize that was in the queue. Yeah, I wish they had explored that more. I wish they had talked about what they meant and how they figured that was the case, and what Smith's career would have been had she not supposedly gone the course that she did. I wish they had expounded on that. You got it? Uh-oh, I think you're muted. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm sharing the wrong screen. My bad.
Okay.
This one?
I don't know if that's the one.
Or you think it's a different one?
It's a different one, and I wouldn't be able to direct you to it.
Okay, give me a moment. I'll find it. And
yeah, if you can talk while I just run downstairs and get my message.
All right. I'm searching for Jamel Hill. Jason Whitlock. I call him the rotund one. Yep. Looking. Oh. Yep, we're still live. Jamel Hill.
Still looking for it?
Yeah, still looking for it. Let's rock into this one, and
Sure.
I'll keep looking for it. Let's see. There we go. There we go.
No, I'm not gonna let you into that.
Come on, she was fairly successful. Barely.
There you go. This is the one.
Steve, I want to get to a topic I think you have some interest in. I know you're upset by this. Spotify has declined to renew Jamel Hill's podcast deal. Unbothered. It's not going to be returning to Spotify. Are you bothered by this?
Is it Spotify or not a fi? Because they weren't bothered to go on with this. I got to tell you about Jamel Hill. I got to tell you about old Jay Hill. Jay Hill would be like if Nathaniel Hackett, especially when it comes to her TV, because she was a fairly successful writer. But
No, I'm not going to let you into that.
Come on, she was fairly successful. Fairly.
Steve.
What?
Steve. What? If you and I got an argument about liquor stores in black neighborhoods or cleaners in black neighborhoods, I would defer to you.
I would be the guy.
I
would be the guy.
Yeah, I would defer to
so.
you. When it comes to sports writing, you should defer to me. Continue.
Okay, and I just want to add this. Hey, put down that orange juice. Okay, anyway, so here's the thing.
All right, let me stop him for a moment there. I thought that was a low blow by on Whitlock on both levels. Hey, he's wrong. Yes, she was somewhat successful. No, not somewhat. She was very successful. She was at one point, as she likes to talk about a lot, the only black female columnist in North America. At one point, she was sports columnist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to get to the point she got at ESPN, that is being wildly successful. That is the definition of it.
Well, I think what Whitlock was taking issue with, if I recall, and as you'll see if you play when you keep playing it, Steve Kim was saying, that's what Whitlock calls him. Steve Kim was saying she was a successful writer. I think Whitlock is saying she wasn't a very good writer. I think that's what his issue is.
Which could happen and does happen. I mean, I think there is, look, much like the running back conversation, like these games are not fair. Like the game moves toward different people and away from other people. And there was a period where John Skipper, and he's talked about this, he's a former CEO of ESPN, said that he was going to diversify that place. And a lot of black people got jobs, including Whitlock, by the way.
Right.
And a lot of black people who were there got elevated, and he said he did this intentionally. He's been very open about it.
Right. And Whitlock, of course, liked to be the traffic cop, deciding he wasn't worthy of that elevation. Because Whitlock had a career as an actual reporter. I don't know what Jamel's career before.
She did too.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say she was unfairly elevated. That's my personal.
Yeah. I think that's a pop shot. That's like, it's not beneath Whitlock because he's a Whitlock, but yeah, he's wrong about that. I'll
look
keep
how
going.
he's smiling. Look how I love how he's smiling in the clip.
Yeah, he's about to love. I mean, this is he loves this. Like,
he might as well tuck a napkin into his lapel and and savor the. That's what he looks like he's about to do. He's about to take a bite of something he really likes.
Mm-hmm.
So as a television personality, it would be like Nathaniel Hackett after last year getting another 3 or 4 NFL head coaching jobs. So that brings to mind, she's like Paul Hackett. Remember Paul Hackett used to ruin all these programs because he was the quarterback coach for Joe Montana. A real difficult job there, right? I get to hide behind Bill Walsh, and I had a guy, number 16 was pretty good, and he ended up getting the big-time Chiefs job. He ran Pitt, head coach at USC. It is amazing. Jamel Hill should be the new Webster's or Urban Dictionary for failing upward. I mean, you just look at the opportunities that she's been given at ESPN, and they tried to do that really the interesting version of Sports Center. That failed. That was an absolute flop. And now she's trying to play a game of semantics where she says, I really wasn't fired and there's stuff going on. Look, at the end of the day, when she absolutely dared Spotify to give me or someone else a $100 million deal like Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Before I had to stop because I thought that I need after backing her against Whitlock's assault, I gotta smack her with this one. That was ridiculous. I noticed she was trying to be it was hyperbole. I know, but man, that was really weak sauce. If there was a black version of Pat McAfee, if let's say Kevin Samuels, who we've talked about a lot, continued his upward ascent, right? He didn't die, and he just continued growing. And he was Pat McAfee sized.
With Pearly Things as his co-host?
We'll have to do another live stream all about that stuff. But
I could imagine it.
But couldn't you see Kevin Samuels or someone like that getting a massive deal from Spotify, something that dwarfed what Jamel Hill got? Or
Yes, I think those are not. I think it'd be hard to imagine a figure on par with Joe Rogan. I'm thinking Chappelle, but Chappelle
he wouldn't
didn't have
do
the,
that. He
and he
wouldn't
wouldn't
make
have the
that kind of commitment.
he wouldn't have the track record of interviewing people either.
And there's been lots of celebrities who have, you know, they have made that initial, like, how shall I say, they yeah, into podcasting, and they just didn't quite, they never quite pulled themselves through it all the way. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, listen, would Mark Maron even get Joe Rogan money from Spotify?
Mark Maron might. Not Joe Rogan money, but because Joe Rogan got nearly $200 million.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So even a white guy with a podcast as successful as Mark Maron's,
yeah, maybe not,
wouldn't get the same.
Yeah, maybe not.
So now you're coming down on Jamel for this, but Kim was also not intimating. I mean, he was just flat out saying she got opportunities that she didn't deserve.
I disagree. I disagree that, I mean, because define deserve. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she lacked the talent.
Yeah, and look, obviously you enjoyed her show.
Very
that
much.
show had a sizable audience. It wasn't a huge audience, but it was
Numbers
a
never
sizable
lie.
one.
Yep.
Numbers never lie, and then his and hers, right? It became one became the other, right?
Yeah, or one was his and hers was the podcast.
No, it became a TV show. It was on TV.
Numbers never. Okay, yeah. Well, they ran them both though for a while.
Yeah, but it definitely evolved into a TV show. I mean, I'm fairly certain of that. But to say that she was not talented or she did not deserve the opportunity, I think that's going too far. Yeah, it was the same show. Just pulling up the Wikipedia. Yeah, it was the same show. Look, I think it's a bad. The logic that it was that she didn't deserve it is I think that's wrong, because there's no such thing, I don't think, as deserving. Okay. But that's just my perspective there. Now back to Stephen A. Kim.
But you have an issue with her not demanding, but saying to Spotify, hey, basically bluffing.
Yeah, like, hey, why it seems like a crutch to say that why isn't Spotify giving black people
Joe Rogan money
when
like, they're not giving anybody Joe Rogan money.
Yeah, and like, look, if Dave Chappelle decided that, hey, or a comedian of Rogan's stature decided, like Kevin Hart's got a show that I just saw. He's got a Peacock show, but he's got but they're paying him up front, right? If he wanted to take that to Spotify, and he could probably get a sizable deal. I don't know that he could get 100 million just because Rogan has such a large audience.
And right.
And also, we're in an era where, like, it's tough to get double-digit millions to watch anything. And Rogan does that a couple times a week. Probably could do that every day to listen or watch. I think conceivably I could see somebody doing it, but I think the other thing that factors into that is the timing that it was done. it was a time where everybody was looking for an exclusive. Everybody was doing the exclusive thing, and now nobody's doing it. Even Spotify's rolling that back. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Rogan's next deal is not exclusive. And he's back on YouTube, and he's back on Apple, and they can still collect the money through the ads, just with a much larger audience. So, I'll continue with Stephen A. Kim.
Yeah, and then I wanted to bring it back to what I consider the origin story of all this, which is when, well, we can talk about it.
Yeah,
you know what
we'll
I
get
have
there.
in mind. Yep.
Spotify said, double dare, you're out of here. So she got what she asked for.
Yeah, she is the female version of Bomani Jones. She keeps failing upwards.
Ooh, Shimani.
She's. I'm just sorry. I followed her sports writing career the whole night. She's never had a real accomplishment. She's always been given opportunities and promotions based on what she might do once they put her in this position. And she wasn't qualified to be a sports columnist. She was an average one in Orlando, and then got there's a black woman writing a column in Orlando. Let's give her a job at ESPN. Average columnist at ESPN. Her and Michael Smith had a podcast. What was it? Numbers Never Lie, or whatever, or His and Hers, whatever it was. It was moderately successful. And I'm stretching the word successful there. And then they got that 6 p.m. Sports Center, again, based off a theory of what she might do. And she blew that up and blew Michael Smith up in the process. It's rarely talked about how she destroyed his career as well. It's rarely talked about. Look, I'm no Jamel Hill fan, and so help us grow the Fearless Army.
So what did they
like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with all of your Fearless.
What did they mean by that? By she destroyed his career?
Well, I have a guess.
He left ESPN right after.
Well, yeah. Look, I think the thought. I think the thought is that. Give me one moment.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
The Pat Bet David Jason Whitlock thing auto played. And that's its own ridiculous.
Sure is. It's a different circus. It's a ticket for a different circus.
And our old friend Roland.
Yes.
Oh my God, that episode was terrible. Terrible. I enjoyed every minute of it, but it was terrible. It was a car wreck because Roland was doing Roland.
Of course.
But I think the point was, I think Whitlock respects Michael Smith as a journalist and didn't respect Jamel. That he thought that Smith had a higher ceiling, and she killed it. That's what I took from that.
So, along these same lines, when we're talking about narratives and the racial chords that these things strike.
We're going back all the way to the beginning?
Going back all the way to the beginning, because I think it's interesting that Stephen A. didn't catch any flack nearly as much as he should have. When what Skip said to Shannon was considered so atrocious, and his tweet about Damar Hamlin, I think if you were really to measure the most egregious thing, I think Stephen A.'s campaign to besmirch Kwame Brown is beyond the pale of reprehensible. And while I think both of those guys have no conscience about speaking poorly of athletes in a way that they just don't understand because they don't play. Right. I think that when this whole thing between Skip and Shannon happened, people conveniently forgot that Jalen Rose, when he took Skip to task, what year was that happened? 2015, maybe?
Oh, earlier than that.
Okay.
Because Skip and because I don't think Stephen A was on the show. I think he was a guest still at that point when that happened.
But
Jalen Rose, I'll find out for sure. Jalen Rose.
And I don't think we're going to see it in this clip right here, but the next day they had
I have that too. But yeah.
I mean, he took Stephen A to task, and the only person with bravery enough to really go in on that was Jason Whitlock when he was doing the show with Scoop. He
Skip,
really
Scoop.
He really just nuked him and exposed that for what it was. He's the only person that I think has gone fully in depth, other than when Ryan Clark and his crew had Kwame on their show and they talked to him about it, but they were still, they let him speak openly about it. But Whitlock just scorched Stephen A for basically destroying this kid's life, which he's never. I mean, he sort of mealy-mouthed said, well, maybe I should have approached it a little differently, but he kind of doubled down at the same time, sort of like a non-apology apology. I think that's gotten conveniently lost here.
Okay, so this incident happened 11 years ago.
Okay, wow.
April 2021.
Wow.
April 2020. April 2012. 2012.
Yeah.
So let's pivot. Let's show a bit of Jalen back when he was dangerous.
And it's up to us to say what's in our head, say what's in our heart.
This is the reaction. My bad. Let me go to the other one, to the destroy.
Or there's one that says puts him in a body bag or something.
Yeah. Oh my.
Which he did.
Yeah, he did.
And he was 100% right, but he was talking to both of them.
By the way, the headline on vibe.com from the time was ESPN host battle, Jalen Rose versus Skip Bayless featuring Stephen A. Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of outlets taking advantage of the smoke. All right, let's got it here on my list here. Okay, here we are.
Too much time at too hard of an academic school, and I quit. It was the best choice I ever made because I had no chance of making it there as any kind of a starting player. So and that has nothing to do with anything, but I have that much knowledge. Then I look at Mickey Loomis, who just built the Super Bowl winning New Orleans Saints, didn't play high school football. In my days in Dallas, Gil Brandt built the dynasty Dallas Cowboys of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He didn't play any high school sport. So how does he know? How did he have any idea how to build that dynasty? Then I look across the board. We have a new wave in baseball and the NBA of these GMs who are computer heads, who are Moneyball GMs. We have a whole bunch of them. Sam Presti in Oklahoma City, and we have countless in baseball.
Oh, the Ivy Leaguers.
Yeah, they're everywhere. They
Theo Epstein in Boston.
didn't play. They're unathletic. We saw Lawrence Frank.
I know, I like that.
Oh my God. Look at Jalen.
I like
Jalen. He's just lying in wait. Oh my God. I haven't looked at this closely in a long time.
Yeah, his whole demeanor is different than what it eventually turned into.
Well, also I think he knows he's got it in his back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
What's about to come, and he just looks so. I don't know. He looks relaxed.
They didn't play. They're unathletic. We saw Lawrence Frank coach in New Orleans. I mean, in New Jersey. Didn't play the game. Am I right? Am I right?
I think Jalen thinks you're wrong.
Okay, then on the flip side,
even the host is.
history of any sport. Michael Jordan.
Is this a debate? No, it's
No, I'm just making my case. But wait a second. Was Michael Jordan the worst GM I've ever seen? Yes, he was. Which is typically what happens to the greater the player, the less perspective he usually has.
Okay.
He's actually not wrong about that.
No, but that's a different discussion.
It's a different discussion.
It's related.
That's
It's
a red
certainly.
herring.
It's certainly related. I mean, they're talking about the whole. And Jalen is not one to. He had said this many times. He's not one to say, "Well, you never played, so you can't talk about sports." What he's talking about is you weren't successful. Why are you taking shots at people that are injurious to them? Why are you being hurtful? So
yeah, he's demanding respect, and Bayless doesn't respect people. Well,
neither does Stephen A.
Everybody.
Neither does Stephen A.
Fair.
Play.
So that's Skip's monologue. Now tell Skip why he's wrong.
Well, this is the thing. There are people that have had success in our country that didn't graduate from high school, that didn't graduate from college, but you're not going to go tell kids to follow their lead because they're individual cases. For example, somebody like Bill Gates, he didn't graduate from college, right?
Okay, let's keep it in the sports context.
But he's had tremendous amount of success in his life. But when I go talk to a bunch of high school kids, I'm not going to use him as an example because he's one of a kind. And I say all that to say this. The reason why when you say or you demean other people that's done it is because you don't understand or respect the time, energy, and effort that has gone into being a professional. It's more than just watching the 48 minutes of the game. It's the physical, the mental, the emotional. You can't determine what goes on in the foxhole if you've never been in the foxhole. And the reason why people get on your case about that is because you're insensitive a lot of times to the fact when you say, oh, you know a whole heck of a lot about sitting. Well, I'd rather sit on the Phoenix Suns bench than wonder about how I'm going to pull a hamstring running on the treadmill like you do every day. So that's the difference. And also you have to be unbiased. We know if LeBron James goes out and scores 59 points in the first quarter and he misses the game-winning shot, you're going to say, oh, he doesn't have the clutch gene. What players?
Am I wrong about that?
But this is what. But this.
Well, you're totally dismissing his 59 points in the first. You always focus on the ugly pixel in the beautiful picture. And
Wow. So
I forgot. I never remembered the
Jay
moderator.
Crawford. Jay Crawford
jumping in. This is the next day. I'm pretty sure this isn't the Water Pistol Pete moment.
I have a whole clip that is Water Pistol Pete.
Right. So this is the following. They're talking about it the following day. I'm pretty sure, but we can keep this is very entertaining.
James,
I got another analogy, and I like Brandon Marshall as a football player. You would take Brandon Marshall's character over Terrell Owens' character.
Absolutely.
And this man has tremendous off the court and off the field issues. Terrell Owens' issues have been on the field, but yet we know that you don't like T.O., so that you're going to take your opinion personally.
Wait a second. If I spent time around T.O., yes, I do. I know him. Yes, I do. Have you spent time around Terrell Owens? No.
I spend time with Terrell Owens. I play basketball with Terrell Owens all the time. See, that's another thing. You don't know. That's the whole issue. So you can't necessarily comment on things sometimes that you don't know, buddy. We love you, but...
All right. I thought that would be a healthy debate.
It was a nice try, but it was.
I didn't get a chance to talk. You gave your bio for 30 minutes. And when you play high school basketball, that don't count.
Okay.
Please.
I said it was worth nothing.
We're back at the debate desk in just a little bit. I'm glad you did that.
Okay. So maybe it was the day afterward.
Yeah, that sounds like what they did to
patch things up.
Well, see, what I thought was interesting about this is I got the impression when this happened that the network was capitalizing on, hey, let's extend this So the next day, something happened here. We had a moment that registered. I don't know that I have no way of knowing that, but
well, let me switch it for this one. See if we can get the original moment
but
here.
the water pistol Pete moment is great, and there's also a moment where he says to Stephen A, "How do you think Kwame feels when you say Kwame?"
The positions.
Oh, here we go. This is it.
This can follow the game. Just because you're a power forward, that doesn't make you physical. Just because you're a shooting guard, that don't mean you can jack up threes. That's
Come on.
What were you, Jalen? What were you?
What were you? Did you?
What were you?
Did you average 1.4 points as a senior? In
Oh my God.
high school?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
All right,
so
I'm backing
all
it
that
up. I'm backing it
pistol
up.
stuff, the positions were only created so a novice could follow the game. Just because you're a power forward, that doesn't make you physical. Just because you're a shooting guard, that don't mean you can jack up threes. That's
What were you, Jalen? What were you?
What were you? Did you?
What were you?
Did you average 1.4 points as a senior in high school?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so all of that Pistol P stuff, Water Pistol Pete Jr.
Okay, we'll address that later. We're going to.
Don't ignore that. Did you play junior?
Yeah.
Did you play JV as a junior?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I follow.
What were you? What
Okay.
were you? What was your position?
I have no position. I have.
You were a point guard.
I have no game.
You were a.
Well, that's interesting too, because I don't think Skip was asking him what position he played to denigrate him. I think he was talking about what position he played to make a point about positions and the analysis of different positions. I don't think he was what position were you? I don't think Skip meant that question.
The way he took it?
Yes. Yes. That's sort of hard to follow exactly but so I think that's why Skip took it as a sideswipe. But I also think Skip is a person who can dish it out and can't take it. And I think that's not unusual among people who are literally armchair quarterbacks.
Well, I and you see this as a precursor for everything that we've hit prior, because Bueller? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. Because
yeah, like I remember this moment. I don't see this as a seminal moment the way you do. You see this as a seminal moment, and I want you to lay it out. Why?
Well, I think it is the perfect setup, or it's the perfect antecedent to everything, to all of these dynamics that played out in later years, which we skipped over, the ferocious coming onto the scene of Kwame Brown when he finally had enough and burst on, like a bomb going off onto the internet. I see this as one of the important sort of, not breaking the fifth wall, but tearing behind the curtain of what's really going on when you have athletes and non-athletes in the same space, and also non-athletes dominating the narrative that gets painted about athletes and athletes pushing back. And to some degree, or I would say to a significant degree, that's also what was happening. Those same trickles were taking place in the friction between Shannon and Skip. I think Skip and Stephen A never should have broken up. They were the perfect comedy duo of two people who have no concept of what it's like to actually play sports, and they just wanted to feel like they could say whatever they wanted to say about people and get away with it. Now, I think the other thing, and I'm going to get back to your question, but I think the other thing that's also super important here is the embrace debate format may have dumbed down the way we talk about sports. However, I think it was created to mimic the way the average person sits around with their friends or whatever debating sports. I think if you go into a barbershop, you would see Skip and Stephen A were designed to stand in for us. I don't talk about sports this way. I don't like to demean athletes. But the guys is, oh, that guy's a bum and he sucks and blah, 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 blah. Like
But
that is very common.
There's ciphers for barbershop talk.
Yes,
and
that's
locker room talk.
extremely common when you talk to people about sports. They just say,
That
they
kind
just
of thing.
unload their feelings, that kind of thing, right? So these personas were created, and that doesn't mesh well when you're sitting in a room with athletes who are thinking, dude, I've actually fucking done this shit. What are you talking about? Right? So this was like sort of the first shot across the bow, not just for Skip and not just against Skip, but against this whole model and against really the way we think about athletes and more generally, because I mean, people feel they have ownership of athletes. That guy sucks and he disappointed me. And we take it personally when they don't perform up to our standards. I just think that it's the precursor, and I think it is a seminal moment. I think it set the stage for some of the blowback that Skip got unfairly later that was overlooked. The component that Stephen A, where Jalen also takes Stephen A to task, was overlooked later. And I think there's this lingering sense that I think Skip is completely oblivious to, that like black men don't like the way they're more likely to, it rubs people the wrong way to hear Skip speaking to black men this way on air and in a way that's demeaning. Like when he said to Jalen, like, oh, wrong debate or something like that. He's clearly somebody who's used to being in control of the conversation, and that control has been, eroded over time. So I see this as the antecedent, the precedent to what we saw later. Does that answer your question?
I guess I don't quite see the direct connection.
Because I think because when Jalen took that shot, and when Richard Sherman took that shot at Skip,
I'm better at life than
I'm better at life than you. Yeah, which now they're talking about getting them on the same show. I guess was that what?
Yeah. He's apparently one of the finalists.
He wants to do it.
Why wouldn't he?
I don't know.
He's wanted to be a TV star. Says he was a player. And just for the I'm better at life, I'll go there before we get back to Lebatard, because I do think it does. The two things do connect.
Good do you really believe you are? Because you got people out there looking at you and saying, he's just talking smack. How good do you believe you are?
Well, I believe my numbers speak for themselves. I mean, my tape speaks for itself. My tape is my resume. That's what I leave it up to. I mean, you can say whatever you want. Skip can say whatever he wants, but Skip, whenever you refer to me, whenever you speak to me, whenever you address me as all-pro Stanford graduate, because those are some accomplishments you can aspire to. You will never accomplish. You have never accomplished anything. So, but those things are on my resume. Those are what I've done. It's my second year in the NFL, going on my third. I mean, you tell me who's wrong.
Okay, I'll accept that. I think I've accomplished more in my field than you have in yours, though you're just getting started.
So I'm the top of my field. So I'm all pro. I'm the best, one of the best 22 players in the NFL. You're going to brush it off, but I don't think you're the best 22 anything in sports and in media and anything. I think you think more of yourself than you actually can, prove. But
okay. Do you think you're better than Darrelle Revis is right now?
In my 24 years of life, I'm better at life than you. let's
All
get
right.
down
Well,
to
let's
brass
stay.
tacks.
Let's not get personal here. I just
Isn't
you
that funny?
think you're better than Darrell Revis is, right?
You find I mean it. When I heard it initially years and years and years ago, yeah. Now it's kind of, I don't know. It doesn't strike me as funny anymore.
I didn't think it was funny at the time. I thought what was funny is like, let's not get personal here, which is like, you know,
That's what Skip does, and that's what Stephen A does often
of course,
too.
Stephen A does that all the time, and look at how amused Stephen A is.
Yeah,
Stephen A could easily get as much flack as Skip does.
Yeah, and he does. I mean, like, you know, a lot of players, especially NBA players, have called him out for different stuff.
With this much intensity, though.
No, and this is a special moment because it happened live on TV.
Right. You know what's interesting is I love the three expressions that where you freeze framed it.
Yeah.
Stephen A looks amused. Like he's like, okay, let's get the entertainment. This is perfect. I'm not even going to say anything here because, you know, there's this like entertainment value moment going on. Stephen A's got his producer hat on. But what I always thought was interesting about this is I feel you can hear the adrenaline quivering in Richard Sherman's voice.
Oh yeah. He's still new to this.
But you know how when you psych yourself up to have a confrontation with someone, your voice quivers like that because you're actually nervous.
Yep.
He doesn't sound, I mean, yes, he said it, but he sounds, I guess for lack of a better word, nervous. I wonder.
Yeah.
When they pitched it to him and, hey, you want to do this? Like, what were those fucking discussions like? Like,
I think he said, yeah, I'll do it. But did he talk to his boys? Probably. He didn't talk to ESPN about this.
How much do you think would be personal animosity between him and Skip if they did that show? If they went through with it?
Oh, at this point, probably not much.
I mean, why would you do a show with Cowherd? Cowherd has said way more outrageous shit.
Because he's been doing reps, like he did at Chris Collinsworth podcast as well. He's been preparing for this moment, for one of these seats to open up.
Now, do you think with you know,
that's the way in now.
I get it. But do you think from your James Brown perspective, because Marcellus has worked with Skip and is one of the few people to speak highly of him and says that he appreciates him as a person. What do you think, how possible is it that those two could go in and do a show together and actually end up liking each other?
As I said earlier, this ain't show friends. This is show business.
Yes, but you can. So listen,
I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't like each other. I'm saying that this is show business, not show friends.
I get it, but there are people who do appreciate each other, even though they're in show business.
Yeah,
and I wonder. It happens. I think that show would be a lot more fucking interesting and resonate more if there was genuine appreciation and getting to know of each other. I think we need to move past this embrace debate. Let's just be two caricatures.
Oh.
How about if they got to fucking know each other and really talk? Skip, I don't think is capable of doing that.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's whether he's capable of doing it. I think it's a matter of whether the producers at Fox and the producers at ESPN want that, and the management wants that.
Or do they want these guys to get in the ring and butt heads, which I think is playing into, but I don't like that. I'm uncomfortable with that.
It's what they want. It's what they've always wanted. It's what's working.
Okay, but is it working?
I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm saying I think that's why. I think it's one of the reasons why Skip wants to keep it a 2-part harmony. Basically,
think
what
he's
you
wise
saw
to do that.
is an endless arm wrestling match with Shannon Sharpe. It's like he had an endless arm wrestling match with Stephen A. Smith. And yes, he's an old white dude having an arm wrestling match, a verbal arm wrestling match with a bigger, stronger white black guy, younger black guy.
Well,
And that's
Stephen
the
A.
harmony
isn't bigger or
that
stronger.
I don't know. Who knows?
Skip's in great shape,
okay,
by the way.
let's take that out. Let's take that out of
No, but
bigger,
I know what
stronger.
you're saying.
But with a black guy,
right? An athletic.
And this is part of the Lebatard critique. I mean, if we want to go there, I mean, like that, which I think he nailed. It is sort of it is old white dude yelling at younger black guy.
Well,
that's
and
part of it.
Flexing his verbal prowess with an athlete, which now these guys are, all three of them, very, they can hold their own, but there's something about that makes me uncomfortable. And it's also, the show is capitalizing on the fact that they know people are going to be rubbed by it.
Dude.
Like, oh, where you been? This is what media does.
Is television. Jerry Springer aired for 3 decades.
Okay, but
dude, honestly, I watched Crossfire for years and years and years.
But is there an appetite for something different now?
Yes, but the thing is, here's the problem, and this gets back to hour 1 of our conversation. Like, there's not one Facebook, there's nearly 2 billion Facebooks. There's not. Yes, there is a want for something different. That's why whoever will watch and listen to this will watch and listen to this. Here's what I would say is that what we have done is take a crystal vase and shattered it. And every piece is something different. And some of the larger clubs will make a lot of money and will eventually make, a percentage of what they have done, but not make what they've done.
So I guess if we could close with this question, unless you wanted to close with something else.
Well, I wanted to go into Lebatard's criticism, honestly.
Well,
I think that dovetails very well.
Okay, I guess I'll just ask you, how well do you think a show with Richard Sherman and Skip Bayless would do?
About the same as
well
as it
enough
did with Shannon. Well enough.
And pretty well. I mean, all things considered.
Yeah, because look, they're all on a sinking ship. Like everybody's in fewer and fewer homes. It would do okay. I think it would keep most of its digital interest. I think there'd be a surge of interest to start. And I think they do okay. And also, how long is Skip in this game at all?
That's what I was just going to ask you. Which also,
he's what, 71, 72?
He's in great shape though, but
it doesn't matter. I mean, the question is how long. Look, this set of Fox executives made this choice, right? How long are they going to be in charge there?
Marcella says Skip will be fine. What does that look like to you?
Define fine.
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Is fine 1 year? Is fine 2 years?
No, I think he thinks right. He's here to stay.
I don't think so.
What do you think his future looks like?
I think he's got like 3. I think the channel, like I said, because of the headwinds that we've discussed early in this stream, that these networks just will not be around as long, at least not in their current form.
Right.
And they're not going to pay. They're not going to pay anybody $7 million a year to do this. I mean, this is where you get back to Bob Iger and Disney. and the idea that Disney is interested in private equity. You know what private equity does when they buy media properties?
They cut costs, right?
At every turn.
Mm-hmm. Is that what you were getting at?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We Alden Capital is one of the most notorious ones. They've been buying up major newspapers. They've been selling off assets left and right. They've laid off. They've nuked staffs. There's another one that my former employer, USA Today, Gannett, is in private equity, owns a large chunk of that, and ever since they've had to change their whole perspective and shrink their approach to everything. So look, these networks, I think ESPN's a little bit different in that since they have so many large sports properties, perhaps they could find their footing, since they are such a huge. They're the worldwide leader in sports, of course. They could conceivably make themselves indispensable, but I just don't see. I think they're going to want cheaper across the board. And so I think the format of these shows probably stays. But no one's going to be paying Skip Bayless this kind of money. No one's going to be paying Stephen A. that kind of money. No. And as the years go on, no.
Interesting. So maybe Lebatard is kind of
that's the other part of the first hour of this is that, hey, look, that seems to be the future. Where you go, you partner with another business that wants the kind of audience that you want, and they get to be the title sponsor. And we're basically back to the 1930s radio model. And we're Procter and Gamble sponsoring daytime dramas.
Wow.
And that's where we go back to. That's until there's some sort of new breakthrough technologically that brings audiences back together again in large chunks. I think that's where we're headed.
And we might not get to that. We might not.
Maybe not.
Right.
Because it seems like all the technological changes are going in the opposite direction.
Yeah. What would stem the tide of that? I don't know. I can't conceive it. Maybe there is something, but I can't picture it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't think that's the metaverse. The metaverse is the opposite of that.
Right. Exactly.
The metaverse and podcasting are the two, advances, and they are shredding the audiences. And they are smashing the shards of the crystal vase. And everybody's trying to be the platform for those things, and the platform for those things could capture all kinds of money, kind of like YouTube is capturing money off of us talking right now. But yeah, like I like what
those platforms. Go ahead.
What I see from these guys and all the friction between these guys are the screams of a dying empire.
Well,
so
that seems. I mean, that's like the perfect note to end. Plus, I'm starving.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll do another live stream down the road.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Or whenever you want. So, all right. So
okay, man.
Thank you, and thanks for anybody who spent some time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me too.
Yeah, no problem. This was a blast.
For sure. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, peace.
Take care. Bye-bye.